Four of the best chess players in the world remain in the Skilling Open as we head into semi-finals today. Now, who can avoid the biggest time trouble and the most devastating blunders as nerves get higher? Well, welcome to the Champions Chess Tour.
Welcome to my humble abode.
This time I'll be playing from Moscow, but here's where I live.
Hi, this is Vidit Gujarati. There are time differences, so I have to change my sleep schedule accordingly.
This is my usual work spot, power.
So this is my desk.
You need a very good mouse.
There's the old mouse I use for all the other tournaments.
It can be a little bit dark in here.
Some of the medals. I love online chess because I can play from the comfort of my home, having Indian food, lots of stuff.
For winning the Skilling Open is not enough. I need some more.
The Skilling Open is the very first tournament in the Champions Chess Tour. We are done with preliminaries, we're done with quarterfinals. 4 players remain, and to guide us through the semi-finals, Women's Grandmaster Jovanka Houska and Grandmaster David Howell. And David, among these 4 semi-finalists, are there any surprises?
I think there might well be surprises on the cards. These are the 4 best online speed players in the whole world. Yes, we have Magnus Carlsen, the world champion. Yes, we have Hikaru Nakamura, the king of online chess. But their opponents today are extremely good as well.
And Jovanka, they have now played 5 days of intense chess. What do you expect from the semi-finals?
Well, like you said, it's been intense. There's been so much drama on the board. I fully expect that to continue. And in fact, the players themselves are getting into the fighting mood. In fact, Magnus Carlsen, the champ himself, he tweeted, "So I guess that guy," referring to Anish Giri, "isn't playing today." And you can see it there. And Anish Giri was quick to respond with, "Oh, he's already missing me." So, yeah, some brilliant action on Twitter there. And you have to remember that we do want everyone to join in the fun and join in the conversation. And you can do this by tweeting us by using the hashtag #ChessChamps. Send us your move suggestions, your tweets, your comments, anything goes.
Definitely. And we definitely will miss Anish Giri, a fantastic chess player. He did get knocked out in the quarterfinals again against Magnus Carlsen. And we have, as we mentioned, come to the semi-finals, Jovanka. That means 2 days of 2 matches. Or what does this mean? I mean, what is the structure for the semi-finals?
It's going to be fantastic. That's what it means, Kai. It's going to be so good. We will have 2 days of intense chess when the 4 players will play head-to-head matches. Those are 2 matches, and each match consists of 4 rapid games per day.
And rapid, David, we've been through this many days now. We know the time control, but yesterday we did see the tie breaks in the quarterfinals. Obviously, this is the first day of semi-finals, and what will this day look like?
That's right. So today will just be a maximum of 4 games. We are going to forget the Blitz, forget the Armageddon for now. Today will be 4 games, 15 minutes for each side per game. They do get 10 seconds after every move. Just 1 point for a win, half point for a draw. But today is just best of 4.
Best of 4. Okay, so this is what we have in store for today's first day of semi-finals. Now, the quarterfinals were decided yesterday. Magnus Carlsen was the big favorite against Anish Giri, but the world champion got off to a nervous start.
Wesley So had a slow start to the quarterfinals and lost day 1 against Timur Rajabov, but he was able to take the match to tie-breaks. Both Blitz games ended in draws, and with the black pieces, So only needed a draw in the Armageddon.
I think we've just seen a big blunder on the board. Look at Rajabov's face. He just looks shocked. Black's queen is attacking a rook along the diagonal and the other rook along the other diagonal. White can't protect them both at the same time. This game is decided.
I'm very pleased with my play today. Things went much better. To be honest with you, I didn't expect to make it today. He wasn't able to put much pressure when he got the white pieces.
In the semi-finals, he will face Hikaru Nakamura, who came back strong on day 2 of the quarterfinals against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Hikaru Nakamura, he beat Vachier-Lagrave. The American is back.
It all came down to the tie-breaks where Vachier-Lagrave won the first Blitz game and Nakamura once again had to strike back.
it is game over. Hikaru has done it.
What a turnaround.
The American chose black in the Armageddon and managed to get the draw he so needed.
Hikaru Nakamura came back so strong today. He won.
In the quarterfinal between Levon Aronian and Ian Napomniachi, we had a lot of action. Aronian won the first match, but Napomniachi had a great second day.
It's not the best move. It might be a bit of a mistake by Levon. He could have won instantly. This actually blows all of his advantage.
It all came down to tie breaks when Pomnyachien snatched the semi-final ticket.
And Aronian resigns. It is checkmate next move. His king's defenseless.
Anish Giri could have gained the upper hand in Game 1 against rival Magnus Carlsen. But instead of pushing for the win, the Dutchman played it too safe.
Don't trade those queens, Anish Giri, because if you trade those queens, Magnus Carlsen, biggest endgame expert out there. Oh no, he's trading the queens.
Traded the queens
off the board.
No.
And then we see the bars zoom back towards the center. Don't do this at home, kids. Don't trade queens when you're on the attack.
Were you surprised when he offered to trade queens there?
No, I know how he plays. It's a sort of position where there feels like there should be something very, very strong for black, but maybe it's not so easy to find.
Carlsen won the first quarterfinal match, but on day 2, Giri once again had the chance to push for a win.
He has played it.
Oh my God.
Everything's going to start leaving the board in a minute, and Anish Giri, he's let him off the hook again. Anish knows he's let it slip.
But all 4 games ended in draws, and Carlsen is ready for the semi-finals where he will face Napomniachi.
He's a very strong player. I think he played very, very well today to make a massive comeback, so it's going to be tough.
All right, well, David, Magnus Carlsen is expecting a tough semi-final, isn't he?
That's right. It's going to be extremely tough. I mean, that game against Anish Giri, it was so tense, so close. But Jan Napomniachi, his rival today in the semi-finals, he's the guy. He's Magnus Carlsen's kryptonite. He's the one of the few who has beaten Magnus on several occasions before.
All right, we will take a look at what the quarterfinals ended up like and the semi-finals that we will have in store today. So Magnus Carlsen, the winner in the game between him and Anish Giri. He will face Jan Napomniachi today, who beat Levon Aronian in the quarterfinals. Wesley So came back so strong yesterday. He beat Timo Rajabo in tiebreaks, and he will face Hikaru Nakamura, who also in tiebreaks beat Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. So I guess we have to sort of expect, Ivanka, that both the two Americans come in with self-confidence and even energy after those tiebreaks yesterday.
Absolutely. They were both on the verge of leaving the competition. When they came back, they had a fantastic day and luck was on their side. So we can expect some hard-fought chess there.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so we have 4 of the very, very, very best chess players in the world remaining in the Champions Chess Tour, the first tournament, Skilling Open. Let's get to know them a little bit better.
Hikaru Nakamura, the most obvious threat to Magnus Carlsen's crown. He's the only player to best the champ in any discipline, and the time controls played in the tour suit his strengths. Nakamura's secret is that he has a finely tuned game plan for every match, something even Carlsen says he struggles against. And he has an army of fans online cheering him on.
Jan Napomniachi. Born in the same year as Magnus Carlsen, the Russian #1 was ahead of the reigning world champion as a youngster. Napomniachi is a class act with enormous potential.
Wesley So hit world #2 in 2016 and was talked about as the next big thing in chess and a potential world champion. In 2019, he crushed Magnus Carlsen to become the Fischer Random World Champion, and in 2020, he won a second US Championship title.
Magnus Carlsen. The Norwegian king of chess has been called everything from the young Justin Bieber of chess in his younger years to the Mozart of chess in more recent years. Now 30, he's a 4-time world champion who also holds the Rapid and Blitz crowns, the record highest rating in history, the longest unbeaten streak in history. He has won everything. Carlsen has to fight for his reputation in every game.
So these are the 4 players in the semi-finals fighting for those 2 spots in the Skilling Open final. And the first semi-final matchup we do have is between Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So, an all-American battle, David. And what's your expectations?
That's right, this one is going to go to the wire. We see there in the graphics on the screen, we see their head-to-head scores. Hikaru Nakamura, he's only beaten Wesley So once in classical chess, but he's lost 3 times. The fact, though, is that he is dominant in rapid chess. He's won 16 times to Wesley So's 8. He must be the big favourite going into this matchup.
And also being online chess, Jovanka, does that make Nakamura the huge favourite here?
Absolutely. We all know in the online arena, Nakamura is king. But also he had such a miraculous recovery yesterday, so I will feel that he has things riding his way. And Hikaru himself actually got into the mood again, tweeting. Ooh. He's making a nice little pun on his opponent's name. So it turns out there is more to this tournament. So we'll see how he gets on.
Oh, we definitely will. Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura. Now, the next semi-final matchup is between world champion Magnus Carlsen and Napomniachi, the Russian. David, this is a huge matchup. What do you expect from it?
That's right. I mentioned Napomniachi historically has been Magnus Carlsen's kryptonite. I was actually there when they were both very young. They're the same age. When they were 8, 9 years old, they were playing against each other, and Napomniachi was always beating Magnus Carlsen. In recent times, though, in rapid chess, Magnus has started to reassert control. He's won 15 times in rapid games against Napomniachi. He's got to be the favourite. The momentum's with him.
And online chess, Jovanka, who got the upper hand among these 2 there?
Well, it's definitely Magnus. Magnus is the golden standard. He is the triple world champion in like classical chess, rapid chess and blitz chess, and the same is true of online chess. He really is the emperor. No one seems to be beating him, and he seems so cool and collected. Definitely the odds are in his favour.
All right. Well, actually, the very first game, the very first round in the Skilling Open, these 2 players met, Magnus Carlsen and Napomniachi, and the world champion, he got off to a horrible start.
Oh, no. Surely not.
We've seen a mouse slip, Kaya.
No!
He's dropped his queen on the wrong square, and we see the results just popped up.
I think the game is over.
He actually did resign?
He has resigned.
It wasn't the best of starts. I was choosing between many strong continuations there, and all of a sudden I have to resign.
The first semi-final round is about to start. We see 2 players, now 3 players getting ready in the room. Hikaru Nakamura, he's not there yet, David.
No, that's right. Every player has different ways of warming up for the game. Maybe he's just getting some fresh air, getting a drink. He knows there's still a couple of minutes left. The others, they're in the zone. They're getting focused. Wesley So kind of looking very smart with his glasses there. Magnus Carlsen just trying to settle down, starting to get concentrated.
Yeah, and Napomniachi walking around. You think he feels the nerves now before facing the world champion?
Yes, definitely. That's a sign of being nervous, of trying to walk off your excitement. So absolutely, he's nervous, but at the same time excited as well.
And the match that we will follow, the first game we will follow, is between Magnus Carlsen and Napomniachi, and they will meet each other at least 3 times today, possibly 4. Have they made now preparations, David, for all the 4 games, or will they take it as it goes?
That's right. I think they'll have a few different match strategies in mind, depending on how the first few games go. They need to decide, OK, what do I do if I want to play solid? What do I do if I need to win? There's so many different scenarios. They'll just take each game as it comes, but they definitely have a plan in mind for the opponent.
And we have to remind everyone that they do have 15 minutes between each game, so they play each other, and as soon as they finish, 15 minutes starts, and they can... Well, what can they do, Jovanka? Relax, eat, drink, prepare? What do you think they do?
I think that they relax. I think some players might meditate, some players might jump up and down, some players might howl in frustration, depending on the result. It's anything goes, basically.
And Magnus Carlsen, everyone always calls him the favorite. Do you think he feels nerves now before a semi-final against someone he played so many times?
I think occasionally, maybe, but the reason he is the world champion is because he can deal with those nerves. He can channel that energy into being productive on the board. We see Magnus Carlsen disappeared there for a moment.
Yeah, maybe that was why he was so concentrated. He was fixing his webcam, and apparently has fallen out. Probably it will come back. Napomniachi is sitting there, and we actually have talked to all the players about if they prefer to see their opponent, if they have the web camera up, or if they prefer not to. What do you think with these 2 players?
Yeah, I know Magnus Carlsen, he's admitted he likes to pull the camera up occasionally, maybe not the whole time. He doesn't want to get distracted by the opponent, but it's nice to see the expressions occasionally.
And there he is, all dressed up, looking nice for the semi-finals. And it is Magnus with white pieces who will make the first move here. And do we have any expectations?
I think if he's feeling aggressive, if he really wants to win, he'll push a pawn in front of his king forward 2 squares. That's normally his trademark move, the trademark of nearly every world champion. I think possibly he's wanting to be solid, though. And Napomniachi, they know each other so well. It's all about who gets to surprise their opponent early in the game.
Yeah, everyone is in suspense. And we have a fantastic tweet from Carl Portman who says, "What a thrilling prospect, the Russian bear against the Norwegian wolf. Both have claws and fangs and big reputations, but they need confidence, cunning, strength, and an iron will to survive. Let the fur fly."
Let the fur fly. That's a perfect description. And we have started, David. Do we see claws already?
Yes, we do. We see that Magnus Carlsen, he's actually gone onto his opponent's home turf. Napomniachi, ever since he was young, ever since these guys were rivals at a young age, he's been playing an opening called the Grunfeld defense as black. Napomniachi, he likes to counterattack. That opening shows that he's welcoming white to try and attack him, but he's going to stay strong and then pounce at the right moment. And Magnus Carlsen, this is a very brave decision, going into something that his opponent knows so well. That shows that Magnus Carlsen, he's probably spent the whole of this morning studying Napomniachi's games, studying what will probably happen on the board. And there we see a set of knights have left the board. The first thing I noticed, though, is white has 2 pawns in the centre, 2 very nice pawns in the centre. Napomniachi has to decide how to counter against those pawns. Yeah, very solid start to the game, but I'm liking what Magnus Carlsen's doing. He's just provoking his opponent. He's saying, I know what you're going to do, and I'm ready for it.
Exactly. I love it, because you go into your opponent's home ground and you're just there, come on, look what I've got prepared for you. I know that I'm better than you, even on your territory. Love it.
That's right, and we saw that on the last turn, black brought his king on the right-hand side of the board. He castled that king. He moved it across 2 squares. He swapped around the rook with it. That's what we should always do in the opening stage to keep our king nice and safe. Magnus Carlsen, in reply, just pushes his queen forward just 1 square, just gaining a bit more scope with that queen. You want to develop all of your pieces towards the centre early on in the game. Next, he'll be thinking about what to do with his king, what to do with his knight, his bishop. Lots of things to think about, and that's why Napomniachi is spending a little bit of time here.
And in fact, this is a position that both Ian Pomnyachien and Magnus Carlsen have faced with the black pieces. So very intriguing.
Yeah, that's right. That means both players will have studied this position before. Napomniachi, he's having a think. He's probably thinking, oh, this must be preparation. This must be a bit of home cooking from Magnus Carlsen. What has he got in store for me? Napomniachi, he develops his knight towards the centre there. Very sensible move. He's attacking one of white's pawns in the centre of the board, and therefore white also brings a knight towards the centre. He also develops it, just keeping his central pawns nice and safe. And we see an advance in the centre of the board. Magnus Carlsen pushing forward. Lots of action here. Lots of pieces being traded. Bishops have left the board. Knights have left the board. White's bishop there has just zoomed up towards the black king to capture an opponent's bishop, an enemy bishop. Black's king could recapture there. There's lots and lots of action happening. Maybe if we bring up the analysis board, we see that there's plenty of choice. Black's king has just recaptured this bishop here. 2 black pieces are under attack. White has a choice. Which one do you take? White has decided to take the bishop, and we see a knight in the centre. Lots and lots of action, and Magnus Carlsen has castled on the opposite side to his opponent. He's castled towards the left.
Yes, and we know that that means, David, that means a war is about to begin.
Yay!
Both sides are going to go crazy and start attacking. We love it.
Okay, so is this a message from Magnus Carlsen that he is going for the win in this very first game?
Yes, he is going for the win, because one funny thing is they are still repeating the games that they themselves have played.
Oh.
So Napomniachi faced this against Giri in July earlier this year, and Magnus himself played it against Anand in 2014.
Yeah, that's right. So Magnus Carlsen has a lot of experience in this type of position before. Here we see he's pushed his bishop out to the edge of the board. Bishops are very long-range pieces, so he's just keeping an eye on a very nice long diagonal there with that bishop. Napomniachi, he's got his head down. He knows, he's seen this position before. He's studied it. He acts like this when he's trying to recall what he's looked at before. Maybe he's got some coaches who've told him what to do in this position, but it's just a memory game. He's trying to recall things now. Magnus Carlsen, meanwhile, he's nearly got 17 minutes on the clock. He's gained almost 2 minutes since we started the game.
So he's been in his preparations this whole time. This was his plan the whole time?
This was his plan. He went right. He knew that Napomniachi was going to go into this line based on his earlier games, and he decided, I'm going to go all for it. And this is the secret move, moving that bishop to the square on the left-hand side of the board.
That's right. And that's what the opening stage, now that both kings have castled, they're both relatively safe, those kings. So the opening has ended. But Magnus Carlsen, he's still been able to predict all of his opponent's moves. That can be scary. If you imagine Napomniachi now, he knows he's been predicted. All of those moves have been predicted. He knows that Magnus Carlsen is ready. He doesn't want to keep allowing Magnus Carlsen to blitz out those moves, to drop those moves on the board. And Napomniachi pushes his king back. He retreats his king 1 square. A very safe move, but maybe a bit of a slow one. It shows that he's not attacking, he's reacting.
And one more very quick move from Magnus.
Yeah, this is all preparation for Magnus. He has been there on the board in this position in the morning. So this is great stuff.
And Magnus Carlsen so often is praised for his intuition, for his endgame play. Do we sometimes forget that he's also excellent at opening preparations and doing the homework?
That's right. Actually, Magnus Carlsen, he has a great team of coaches around him. They often feed him different ideas, and he's the one, he picks and chooses what he likes the look of. He picks positions from them that he thinks, oh, I can attack from here. Oh, this one I can really put pressure on my opponent. And I'm sure one of his coaches has suggested this line to him, and he said, yes, that is the idea to use against Napomniachi. And we see that white has just moved his queen across 1 square, eyeing up that black knight in the centre of the board.
And we see Napomniachi, you described, David, the way he's thinking, the way he's moving. You can see he's really trying to memorize what he knows about this position and how he can make it work for him.
Yeah, I think Magnus is calm as anything, but Napomniachi now is on fresh territory. He has to work out what has to be done. He has to work out how he is going to start attacking the white king on the left-hand side of the board, how he can open up lines, because we've discussed it before, it's the currency for attack. You need to open lines. And he also has to decide what to do with that central knight. Okay, and he has moved the queen to the edge
and
of the
look at the bar. It says this is completely winning for Magnus Carlsen.
I'm shocked. Magnus, he's frowning. I think
Is this a blunder?
I think that might be a blunder. I'm trying to work out why Napomniachi has played that move. So we see there, he's just shuffled his queen across. He's defending his knight right now, but maybe this knight is trapped. White can attack this knight one more time. He can push his pawn forward. Attacking this knight, maybe there's a trick, maybe he can move this knight. There's another option for Magnus Carlsen. He can break the connection between black's queen and black's knight. He can push his central pawn forward. Maybe this is the move that Napomniachi has missed, cutting the coordination between his queen and knight. And suddenly, I think white is going to win a piece. I think that knight is doomed. If the pawn captures the pawn, white can trap this knight now. This knight has no safe square. It's pretty much game over already if Magnus Carlsen finds this idea.
All right, well, let's see the faces of the players like right now. You said you saw Magnus frowning, that he was definitely surprised by that move.
But look at him, he looks pounced, ready to strike.
Yeah.
I think he knows that this, moving that queen to defend the knight in such a way, it looks so bizarre to me, David. I just couldn't fathom it. And it's so passive. And of course, David pointed out a fantastic line and then just wins on the spot. So.
And it doesn't look like Napomniachi has realized that he might have blundered horribly. Okay.
No, he will now. He will.
Napomniachi's face, I think he's slowly starting to realise what he's done.
Oh, yes. He realises... Napomniachi realises. Is this a loss for him in the first game already?
Already. Yes. Imagine Magnus Carlsen, he's still in his homework probably. He's probably even studied this exact position before. And Napomniachi, he's just been caught unawares. He's been caught by surprise. It's pretty much game over. We see the bar underneath the players, this green bar, it's all the way over to white side now. That means the white is completely winning. Plus 3.6, that means more than 3 pawns ahead at this point. That's because black's knight is trapped in the centre of the board.
And Napomniachi, he simply had not seen that pawn move, that possibility for Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, if you look at the pawn move now, it looks a bit strange to march your pawn one square forward where the queen protects it and the pawn is also attacking it. So that's why it was a very unexpected move. But it's such a brilliant move because it interrupts the coordination between the queen and the knight. And there really is nothing for it for Napomniachi.
What do we expect from Jan Napomniachi now?
I expect maybe some few moves, just because really how many moves are we? We are 16 moves in, and no one wants to lose under 20 moves. Otherwise, you go into that horrible collection that's called the Book of Miniatures, and you don't want to go in there. So I expect some like just some spite moves, and then I think we'll see a game 2 in progress.
That's right. As Jovanka mentioned, it's just a badge of honour as a chess player that we never lose. I mean, especially these top guys, they nearly never lose under 20 moves. It's just almost unheard of. And to be losing a piece this early on in the game, Napomniachi, I think he's going to pause here just for a couple of minutes. OK, he has played pawn takes pawn. We will see Magnus Carlsen's next move immediately. His pawn has advanced. White's pawn has advanced to attack that knight in the centre of the board. That knight is trapped. Napomniachi, he's just got to find a way to try and survive, to just keep the game going as long as possible, to hope that Magnus Carlsen either gets nervous or makes another mouse slip. I think that's the only chance. But Napomniachi's face there, he looks disgusted.
Yeah, I think...
Yeah, he knows it's already game over.
Yeah, you can see it there. He has... I think he's emotionally absolved himself of this game, and that's it.
Wow. What a devastating start to the day for Jan Napomniachi.
It's certainly not ideal. No. I mean, it is every chess player's nightmare to lose on 20 moves, and certainly it would be a complete horror to lose in such a public way as this.
Yeah, that's right. And there we see Black has just shuffled his rook across one square. He's allowing his knight to be taken by a pawn. A knight is worth 3 points, much more valuable than that white pawn. So it's bad. It's a very bad transition here for Napomniachi, but he will get a couple of points. He will get a couple of pawns for that knight. He'll try and keep the game going if he can. It's not looking good, but he knows, OK, let's just keep this one going, tire Magnus Carlsen out slightly before resigning, before giving up and moving on to the next one.
Wow, and for Magnus Carlsen, well, a shocking start, I guess. He didn't expect Jan Napomniachi to lose this already, I mean, in the opening?
Yep, it's a gift. It's just a gift. You know, you put hardly any effort into the game and you've already scored a point. So this is just a dream for Napomniachi. You can see it in his face. He knows it's gone terribly downhill.
Is it actually a little bit embarrassing for him, this mistake he's made?
Yeah, I think ever so slightly. He'll try and brush it off. That's what you have to do. You have to focus on the next game. But when he looks back on this match, I mean, for example, if he gets knocked out tomorrow, he'll look back on this game and think this is where it all went wrong. Magnus Carlsen actually not even capturing that knight in the middle of the board. That knight is still trapped. It has no safe squares.
Just teasing him.
Just teasing him, exactly. Yeah. He's just rubbing it in. He's saying, I'm not in a rush. I'm just going to prove my pieces. White brings a rook towards the centre. He will capture that knight when it suits him. Magnus... Yeah, I mean, he's trying to stay focused. He's trying to keep his poker face, but I think inside he's laughing. He's jumping up and down.
And to do this in the Grunfeld, which is Napomniachi's territory, this is his bread and butter. Yeah, it's even more painful.
Oh, and it is painful looking at his face. He obviously realizes the trouble he put himself in. And we talked so much about... Oh, let's take this move first.
That's right. So Black has nothing to do. That knight has no safe squares. So he thinks, OK, I might as well push my pawns forward. And we see Black pushes a pawn on the left there. It's the same side as White's king. It's a dream now that Black can try and push those pawns forward, open up squares, open up lines towards White's king. But it's going to be far, far too slow. And we see Magnus Carlsen, he's just playing with his food now. He's just teasing him. He just shuffles his king across one square. He knows there's no rush. Now he finally captures that knight in the centre. Black's knight has disappeared. He gets a pawn for it. And White, OK, Magnus Carlsen, he's not even pausing to think. He's pushed another pawn forward, attacking that black rook now in the middle of the board. It's hard to give any advice for Napomniachi.
Absolutely, it really is very difficult. He just needs to get over the 20 move mark, and he's done that. So now it's time to pack up and try again in the second game.
Yeah, and we know Magnus. He Oh, another move. We'll take that first.
That's right. If we just bring up the board now, we can see that Black is trying to create threats. He just has to hope for a kind of a moment of madness from Magnus Carlsen. Black is attacking the white queen here. It's just a one-move threat, but white has so many options. For example, the queen could jump forward.
And it's been played.
It has been played.
That is like the perfect attacking square for a queen, especially with Black's pawn formation on the right-hand side of the board. Just look at it, it's right in the middle there. So Napomniachi really trying hard. He has pushed his leftmost pawn up the board and he's trying to indicate some kind of aggressive intentions. But at the end of the day, it's just a pawn that is attacking white's king. And as long as Magnus is very careful, then nothing can go wrong.
That's right, Magnus, his pieces are all perfectly placed right now. Black, as Jovanka mentions, Black's only attacking with a pawn. A pawn cannot give checkmate on its own. It's, I think, just 2 or 3 accurate moves and we will see Napomniachi give up.
It is Magnus thinking, and we know he's been bantering on Twitter with Anish Giri. I never get to ask this question. They keep playing these fast moves. Is it something interesting happening, David?
White's just trying to keep the king, his king shelter. He's just trying to keep it blocked. That left side of the board, White's king is just trying to maintain as much safety as possible. As long as Black's queen doesn't get into the game, as long as Black's queen is stuck deep in his own camp, then White's king isn't extremely safe. Magnus Carlsen just playing very sensible chess.
Yeah, but as long as that white queen exists on its beautiful square right in the heart of the black camp, I don't think Napomniachi can even dream about attacking this white king. So, yeah, bad news there. But you have to remember, David, that every single game does count because it will lead to elimination. It's the semi-finals, and whoever is the victor ends up in the final. And we also have to think about those poor people who have been eliminated from the tournament.
Yeah, that's right. The players who are eliminated, especially in the first round, they can actually be voted back in, can't they, Jovanka?
They can be voted in. And in fact, we have seen some of those 8 players on the campaign trail. And we have a tweet from Sergei Karekin. It says, if you'd like to see me play the next major, premium members can vote here. And if you're not premium member yet, there is a 50% offer right now, which means it's Black Friday.
Black Friday.
You've got to take advantage of those deals. It is an excellent time to become a premium member on Chess24. And we also have a tweet from Vidit, who also is asking, there is a chance for me to play in the next event of Champions Chess Tour by voting me back in. If you're a Chess24 premium member, please do vote below. Additionally, you can become a chess24.com at a 50% discount because it is Black Friday.
Yay!
And you can use the code BF2020.
Yes. So everyone, head into championschesstour.com and get your 50% tour passes, and then you can vote back in one of the 8 players that left us in the preliminaries. They will be voted. One of them will be voted back in for the major that starts December 26th. Ooh.
I've already voted.
Oh, have you?
Yes.
Can you say who you voted for?
Yeah, I was honest about it. I love the underdog. And for me, the most unexpected player in that tournament was Liam Lequang. And, he played some fantastic chess, especially at the end when he came back. And he is such a nice guy. And I love the nice guys. And he has a great smile. So I voted for him.
And he was so close to qualifying for top 8 as well. Who would you vote for, David?
Oh, that's too close to call. I think there's so many options. We could vote for Peter Svidler, who's one of the most popular commentators on Chess24. I mean, he'd be one of my...
But then Chess24 wouldn't have their commentator.
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. I mean, we saw there the tweet from Vidit, the young Indian. He's got so many fans. I'm a huge fan as well. He played some great games in that preliminary stage. He'd be one of my favourites. Karyakin, Firuzia.
Alireza Firuzia, Liran Dingluran.
To be honest, they're all great players, so you can't go wrong. It's just a win-win situation.
Duda, who keeps beating Magnus Carlsen. Yes. Well, the choice is yours. It's a hard choice, but if you go into championschesstour.com, you will be able to buy the tour passes, 50% off, and you will be able to vote for the player you want back into the Champions Chess Tour. Fantastic. I do hear the players keep playing some moves. I'm guessing it's still a dead loss for Jan Napomniachi.
That's right. It might be Black Friday, but black in this game is doomed. Another pawn has left the board. Magnus Carlsen did win a pawn. If we bring the board up, just to show the last couple of moves, very nice idea here by Magnus Carlsen. He did win a pawn in the centre. It is teamwork, the queen and rook ganging up together. This was actually a sacrifice, and we see another sacrifice. Black just shuffled his queen across the board. White has dropped his bishop, in the centre here. Look at this. The bishop is lining itself up with the black king. This is beautiful chess. This bishop is actually giving itself up. It's sacrificing itself. If the pawn captures the bishop, it looks like Magnus Carlsen, he's just lost a piece. But this was a sacrifice. White is just going to shuffle his rook across here, and the rooks together on this open line. These rooks love open lines. They're going to penetrate the black position. Next move, an unstoppable move pretty much. White is just going to drop up his rook to the back rank, to Black's first rank, and he's going to get at the black king.
Yeah.
Black's going to have to give up his queen now. It's not just that knight that he lost earlier. Black's queen is about to disappear from the board. This is game over.
And the critical piece in that whole attack is that beautiful queen. And I just love the way that bishop came in. It's like mic drop. There you go, Buster.
You can just imagine the pawn walking up there with the microphone.
Yeah. Oh. Yes.
No, I just love that move. I mean, it's an artistic move as well. He's already ahead by a whole bishop. He doesn't need to take risks. But Magnus Carlsen, he's so confident that he's happy to sacrifice that bishop just to get at the black king. That's the artistic way of finishing it off. Personally, I'd just be playing slow and steady chess. But Magnus Carlsen, he loves to entertain the fans. And that's an impressive move.
Beautiful.
It always seems like the most fantastic chess moves and the moves that are most remembered are the ones that finish with sacrifice, the queen sacrifice, or Bobby Fischer's pawn sacrifice, or the sacrifices.
Yes, everybody loves to sacrifice, and that is a thrill that we get because we give up a piece, because a lot of times we're quite attached to the material. But you give up a piece, you open some lines, you hunt the king, and if the game ends in checkmate, well, that's an even added bonus.
Wouldn't that be horrible for Jan Napomniachi in this game to also end it in a checkmate?
Yeah, that's right. That's another thing that chess players, I mean, we hate to lose, but we hate getting checkmated.
And it has finished. Magnus Carlsen has won the first semi-final game against Jan Napomniachi. Fantastic start for the world champion.
Yeah, that's, Jan Napomniachi, he's actually almost smiling there. He knows that was kind of an embarrassing game. Magnus Carlsen just wiped him off the board. We're only on move 26 and Black has had to resign. He just needs to bounce back now. Magnus could just storm through and win all the rest of these games if Jan Napomniachi can't recover.
Yeah, it's a critical. Every point counts in this setup because, you know, if he loses the match, then he will have to fight back so hard tomorrow, and that might be impossible.
And he's going to remember this one move that he did in this very first game in the semi-finals. Both players still sitting there, looking at the board. Should Jan Napomniachi just forget this now? Just don't look at that move, start preparing for the next game?
Yeah, that is what he has to do in a nutshell, but it's easier said than done because you're always thinking, oh, how embarrassing. In my own opening as well. It's not ideal, but he has to do that. That is the correct mindset, to be present, focus, and just be thinking, right, I have my second game, I can do this. But he hasn't even left the table and he hasn't left the computer. And that worries me because he should go out and just reset.
Yeah, and we saw Magnus Carlsen also sitting there. Did this come too easy for him in the first game? He didn't even look happy.
Yeah, exactly. He knows there's still 3 tough games ahead, potentially. He knows that Napomniachi will never play this badly again in his life, probably ever. So, I think Magnus is still trying to stay in the zone. He can't relax now, just because he's won a game, just because it was that easy. He can't relax.
So, David, they were in the opening. Magnus seemed to have planned all of this, and then the devastation come for Jan Napomniachi. Could you show us again what happened here?
That's right. So if we bring up the board now, we see that White's last move, a very calm move, something that Magnus Carlsen, he'd clearly studied before. He moved his queen forward, just attacking this knight in the middle of the board. And the fight all revolved around this knight. This knight doesn't have too many safe squares. Napomniachi made a big mistake now. He defended it with his queen. He used his queen to defend his knight, but he forgot that this knight has no safe squares. He was actually trying to set a trick here, a very cunning trick, Napomniachi here. He was hoping that Magnus would advance a pawn, attacking this knight, but this would allow black to survive. Black could actually move this knight, give it up, and once it gets captured, black's queen suddenly zooms up the board to take this pawn with a double attack, a check, and next move, the bishop will drop. The bishop will be taken, but Magnus Carlsen stopped that idea. He cut the coordination between the queen and the knight. He stopped that teamwork by pushing a pawn, advancing this pawn, giving it up in order to trap the black knight. And now we see black's queen is terrible. It's just stuck behind its own pawns. Black's knight is helpless. All of its squares are covered by this white bishop. This bishop completely controls the black knight. The knight is trapped. Black had to lose a piece, and he couldn't fight back.
All right, well, that was the first game in the semifinals between Magnus Carlsen and Jan Napomniachi. An easy and great friend for Magnus Carlsen, Jan Napomniachi, now needs to fight back. And as we wait for their next game to start, we do have a guest joining us, and it is Leonard Claussen. He is the co-founder of the presenting partner for the Skilling Open. Leonard, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, we're good.
What a start.
Yes.
Yeah, what a start.
Exactly. How are you watching all this drama unfold?
I think it's nice. I love watching chess online on TV. I think it's great. And obviously, watching Magnus as a Norwegian, it's been some fantastic years.
So glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So glad to hear that. And obviously, we keep hearing Skilling Open, the Skilling Open. Can you actually tell us what is the core business of Skilling?
Yeah, I mean, most of all, we're a tech company that connects people to the most popular financial markets around the world. So we're providing a trading platform where you can trade more than 800 instruments, everything from Forex to shares to cryptos and whatever you want, I would say. We also provide free training through demo accounts, and we have our own Skilling Academy. And we provide daily analysis in order to help people improve their skills within trading. So we believe we're an intuitive, user-friendly, and secure and transparent alternative in something that we know is perceived as a somewhat complex area, to be honest.
But of course, when it comes to trading, there will always be some criticism. And who are the right customers for the services that Skilling offers?
Yeah, well, I would say trading, just like chess, it's very hard to master it. So it means that, no one can simply just start off with trading and expect to be immediately successful at it. So just as a newbie chess player, he wouldn't expect to sit down for his first match and beat a grandmaster. You have to expect a quite long learning curve, but it's not impossible to learn. That's very important to say. Mm-hmm. So and as I mentioned, we provide this free demo account so that people can start off and trade on with virtual money, so they don't have to risk any actual money here. And we think our products are there for those who really want to learn learn about trading and to grow within trading.
And actually, talking about trading, we hear the term trading all the time in chess, trading the bishops, trading the queens. Are there any similarities between your kind of trading and chess?
Oh, yeah, wow. I can go on forever with that. I think there's so many similarities. I already mentioned a few, but maybe it's a good thing to compare or to look at this like if you do trading, like if you play a game of chess. To be successful, and in trading, the opponent would obviously be the market. You will have to have a plan and a strategy before you start, just as you do in chess. You cannot just buy or sell randomly products. You need to, or you cannot randomly move pieces around the board. To be able to create this plan, you need the knowledge about the specific market or maybe your specific opponent. What does he normally do, or how does this market normally react? And also, before you start, you have to do a lot of analysis. And I'm 100% sure every chess player is very familiar with that. During a match and during a session of trading, you will sure have a lot of help if you have the experience, because you have to act and you have to react to what your opponent does or what happens in the market. Even now you have on the board, you have to consider the risk before you make your next move. You cannot just do it randomly. And the precision, I mean, if you execute a move or a trade, you have to be precise. I mean, one wrong move here, as we saw just a few minutes ago, it can destroy the whole match. Or you can lose money in trading. And I mean, the last two things I have to mention. I mean, patience is a key word. You need to be patient, both when you gain the knowledge, maybe that's the boring part, but also when you're in the middle of it. And I've seen it so many times, when a player or a trader becomes impatient, he will make a mistake. You have to make for that right spot where you can make your best move, whether it's on the board or in the market. And finally, I would say emotions, which is, I guess next, or if we can see Nakamura later on, I mean, that's so funny. I mean, as a trader, you have to control your emotions. And it's the same with a chess player. It's not always easy to hide or suppress, but I mean, looking at Nakamura when he realized he'd done something wrong, it's just funny to watch. But even though if he loses that match, I'm pretty sure he comes back stronger after calming down, and also sure he will spend a lot of time analyzing his mistake and learn from that. And let's not forget about the mutual fantastic feeling of victory when you actually succeed, because it is possible.
Of course. Fantastic. Okay, Leonard, thank you so much for, comparing the two, chess and trading. Obviously, much similarities there. And we are so glad that Skilling has decided to team up with the Champions Chess Tour and partner with the tour and with Magnus Carlsen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here.
All right. Well, David, obviously, many similarities here. Is it true that if you're good at chess, you're also good at trading?
Well, possibly. I don't have any experience myself, but I'm actually fascinated by trading. A few of my best friends, they are in that game and they love it. And I mean, it was just so interesting to hear about those similarities. Everything resonated.
I heard a rumour many years ago that grandmasters were being recruited by the City of London just to trade because they're very good with numbers. And I do know of certain grandmasters who are actually millionaires as a result of trading.
All right. Well, we're so glad that Skilling has decided to team up with the Champions Chess Tour for this event, the Skilling Open. Now, let's go on to something very controversial. We asked the chess players, maybe one of the most controversial questions you can ask. Take a look.
That's a hard pass for me. I just find pineapple, I find it highly objectionable.
I actually like this combination.
Never had one and doesn't sound very lucrative.
In general, I'm against sweet things on food that is not dessert. Italians feel very bad about their food being destroyed. So I would say pineapple on pizza is probably a no because I support their cause.
The last time I had pineapple on my pizza was probably 11 years ago, back when I was living in the Philippines.
I don't think I've tried it before. It's not a good mix, but still sometimes I order it because I like pineapple, so...
All right, well, David Anton, he likes pineapple, he likes pizza. How do you feel about pineapple on pizza?
I love it.
Oh, very controversial. David, how about you?
Yeah, just the more the merrier. I throw everything on my pizza and I'll eat it. Yeah.
Wow, okay, so you're not against the sweet stuff on the traditional Italian pizza?
Nope.
All right. Well, do you think Napomniachi and Magnus Carlsen have had time to have some pizza or pineapple or both in between their games now? It's about to start the next one.
I think if anyone needs it, it's Napomniachi. He needs something to spice him into life. He needs something to just help him forget about the last game and refocus.
What is this next game all about for him now, Joanka? He does have white pieces.
Yeah, it's just about recovery. He just has to get motoring because the first game, it will feel like he didn't really get a chance. He made one Howell over move and that was it, game over. So now it's just about perhaps taking a draw, perhaps playing it slow and steady and just getting into the mood to play good chess.
And we see them already sitting there. I will also mention that Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley, so they're still playing their first game. I'm just looking at the bar and it looks sort of dryish, but we will, of course, keep you posted on what happens there as Napomniachi is getting ready to make his first move. And I keep asking you, David, but do you think we will see blood from the beginning here?
I think we will. I think Napomniachi, he's not the type of player to play for a draw. We did see in the preliminary stage, sometimes he tried to force a draw with White, but it's just not his style. He's very aggressive, he's very uncompromising, and if he does go all out for the win, either that'll be fantastic and we'll see fireworks, or we might see Magnus Carlsen counterattack and punish him. It might rebound. So I think either way, we'll be in for a battle.
And we did see him do what he had to do. He threw away his cell phone. He's not allowed to have that by his side when he's playing. Very strict regulations, of course, so the players do not cheat. Of course, they wouldn't cheat. They're professionals. And Magnus Carlsen just have that same game face all day.
Yeah, he is the boss, let's face it.
Oh, and Pomnyachien switched his cup. He's always had this white coffee mug, and I just saw it there. It was yellow now.
Ah, perhaps he has lucky mugs.
Lucky mug. Well, he is going to need it. He is down by 1 point after the very first game in the semi-final. They do play one match today containing on 4 games and one match tomorrow with 4 new games. And if Magnus Carlsen or Napomniachi reaches 2.5 points by the 3 first games today, they do stop playing. Then the first player to 2.5 points is the winner of day 1. And Napomniachi needs to strike back now. He definitely, he cannot have a loss here. I mean, that would be devastating.
No, absolutely. It would be absolutely traumatizing if he were to lose again. And if he were to lose in a way, like, for instance, like David mentioned, that he went too hard for the attack and Magnus Carlsen just counterattacked and he would lose, that would just be awful. OK, so he has put his king's pawn 2 squares forward. So this is already a signal that things are going to perhaps get a little bit aggressive.
That's right. And we see Magnus Carlsen, his clock's ticking. Maybe he doesn't realise the game has started. Magnus, depending on his mood, will react either by copying black by pushing a pawn in front of White's pawn there, in front of his own king. That's kind of the move he plays when he wants to be solid. Or he might go for something called the Sicilian defence, which is a bit more aggressive. It really depends on his style here, depends on his mood. I really like the webcams there. Napomniachi, his lighting, he's white in this game. He knows he needs to win. Magnus Carlsen sitting in the dark. He knows that he needs to hold this game with black. At the very least, hold it. To keep the momentum on his side. But Magnus, the game started.
There he is.
There he is. And he pushes a pawn forward. This is one, it's not heading towards your favourite opening Kaya. It's not heading towards the Sicilian Najdorf, but it is a Sicilian defence by black. This is what Magnus Carlsen plays when he's hoping that he gets a chance to counterattack. It's not his most solid opening. He first started using it regularly in a World Championship match against Fabiano Caruana in 2018. So he does trust this opening as black, but it does mean we'll have a really tense, imbalanced game a bit later on, and Napomniachi having a think what to do here.
Already, and I mean, Magnus hardly spent any time on his clock in that first game. He didn't really have to. Will this perhaps get more complicated?
I think Napomniachi will want to keep more tension on the board. But maybe this is also a difference between the players' homework. Magnus clearly spent this morning studying that opening that we saw in the last game, and that really helped him. I mean, that pretty much guided him to victory in that last game. Napomniachi, it looks like he's taken a couple of pauses. He's playing slightly quicker now. Maybe he's just trying to freestyle, just trying to get Magnus into a position he hasn't studied before. Different strategy there. We see that black, after a couple of trades of pawns in the centre of the board, White's knight in the centre there, black has now castled, which means moving your king across 2 squares, switching it with the rook. This is something to do to keep your king safe in every game. Very safe, sensible play by Magnus. Napomniachi retreating a bishop there, just dropping a bishop back. The moves are coming thick and fast.
Yeah, this actually has never been played by Magnus Carlsen himself before, so definitely new territory for him.
That's right. Actually, one of Magnus's, one of his coaching team, Daniil Dubov, a very young Russian player. Magnus said Daniil Dubov inspired him a couple of years ago when they first started studying chess together, and this is one of Dubov's favourite openings. So he's kind of using an idea that one of his friends plays, and I think that's how for people at home as well who are first starting to learn the game, that's a really useful tip. Just play with your friends, maybe pick up a few ideas that you like of theirs, try and learn from them. You can kind of both improve, both push each other to improve, and that's what even world champions do. That they use other people to help.
Exactly, and it's a lot more fun, to be honest, to play chess with your friends, a bit of banter, insult each other.
And Daniel Dubo, you mentioned him, a player we hopefully get to see later on in the Champions Chess Tour. And is it important, actually, for Magnus as the world champion to stay humble and keep learning and take ideas also from other chess players?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word humble to describe Magnus.
I know.
But, I mean, he has more of a kind of working relationships where he gets sent information by his seconds, and he looks at it and says, I like that, or I don't like that. Change it. So it's not necessarily humble.
All right. I can imagine.
I think the main thing is he doesn't get complacent. He's always trying to push himself to new levels. That's what sets him apart. His game always evolving. He's always trying to improve. And actually, if we bring up the board here, we see that Magnus, he's just played a pawn move, but he is trying to take his opponent's bishop. Black's knight there on the left-hand side. He is trying to capture a bishop with that knight. Normally, this is another thing we tell people not to do, especially when they're first starting out the game. Don't put your knights on the edge of the board, but there has to be a reason if you do, and Black's knight will soon capture a bishop. Meanwhile, White has also copied Black's recent idea. He's also castled his king to the right side there. Both kings very, very safe. This will become more of a manoeuvring battle now. It will become a fight for the centre, a fight for territory.
Yeah. No, I really liked his knight excursion. We've been very critical about putting your knight on the edge of the board, as David says, but the knight excursion to that edge, that's on the left-hand side, is primarily because he wants to trade that bishop. Because if you look at that bishop, it points all the way close to the black king. And you just cannot have such a dangerous piece looking at your king like that.
That's right. So, as Jovanka mentions, this white bishop is the key piece in this opening. Bobby Fischer, a former world champion, American world champion in 1972, he loved this bishop, this light squared bishop. It was his favourite piece, he said. It won him so many games. And therefore, Magnus Carlsen doesn't like that bishop looking at his king. He pushes his knight to the edge of the board, kind of breaking the traditional advice there, but it is going to take that bishop very, very soon. I think that will be a very favourable trade for Magnus Carlsen if he can get it.
Bobby Fischer, the former American world champion, and the battle between the two Americans in the Skilling Open, Nakamura and Wesley So. The first game has ended in a draw. So they will play their next game, the second game, in 10 minutes or so, I think. So, slow start for them, whilst Magnus Carlsen got the first win against Napomniachi in their first game. And they are fighting now in the second game. And I tried to ask this question so many times in the first game. It was so fast. I will ask this question now. So Magnus Carlsen seems to rival with a lot of players. What is the relationship with him and Napomniachi?
I think they're good friends. They've been childhood rivals, but my understanding is that they're very good friends off the board. And I do know that there came a time when Carlsen was looking for someone to be a second, and he needed someone who didn't respect him too much. And he chose Napomniachi. So it's a very nice, friendly rivalry there.
All right. What do you say, David? You know them both.
That's right. I've known them both for longer than I could remember. Since we were about 8, 9 years old. I'm exactly the same age as these guys. You are too, Kaya.
Yeah.
We're all born in 1990. And that generation of players, they had so many battles. Jan Napomniachi, actually, in these young age groups, so for example, in the World Under-10 Championship, he was the dominant force. The World Under-12 Championship, there was one year that Magnus Carlsen, I played him in the final round, and both of us, if we won, we would get the gold medal. We would have won the World Championship, but we ended up drawing against each other. And Napomniachi, he won his last game. He leapfrogged us. He got that gold medal, and I remember Magnus didn't talk to me for 7 years after that. I don't think he talked to Napomniachi for 7 years after that. But now, luckily, we all know each other. We're all good friends. I think there's a lot of mutual respect between these two guys.
And we have a tweet that agrees with you, David, from Carl Portman, who says, world champions never, ever coast. Fischer, Kasparov, Carlsen all push themselves to their limits to stay ahead of the opposition. So, yeah, and if you want to join in the conversation, the fun, the banter in the studio, then please do tweet us using the hashtag #ChessChamps.
That is the hashtag you need to use, and it is so fun to get all the comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, David, we do hear some more moves coming in. I see the bar is still saying that this is drawish.
Yeah, that's right. I think the position is roughly level. Still chances for both sides. If we bring up the board just to show the last couple of moves, not too much has happened. We saw that White just advanced his queen slightly, 1 square. It's really nice having the queen and bishop on the same line, teaming up together. Maybe something could happen on this diagonal later. White might advance his bishop towards Black's king. In the meantime, Black pushes his bishop along 1 square. This is the dream diagonal for every bishop. You want to be on as long a diagonal as possible. Long term, those bishops might become very powerful if pawns start to leave the board. Therefore, Magnus says, OK, your bishop's developed itself, I'm going to block your bishop. And with his last move, he just pushes his pawn, just forming a really nice pawn wall, a pawn chain. All these pawns are going to try and block out this black bishop over here on the left. So very sensible stuff from both sides. Early days, and Magnus Carlsen's last move, bringing a rook into the game. Rooks love open lines. Both players doing exactly what they should do.
OK, well, who would you rather be here, white or black, if you came into this position right now?
I think I would prefer to be black because black's position just looks easy to play. They have control of a half-open line. Just look at that rook on that line, and they control some few squares. White really needs to play a bit hard. They need to go a bit forward with their pieces. And for that reason, I'm going to prefer black because it's just an easier position to play.
I'll say white, just to be difficult. I do think the position is roughly level. Both sides have different plans. There's so much tension. There's only been 1 pawn each leaving the board so far. So this one is early days, but it's warming up nicely. I think this one's going to slowly build up and then explode a bit later on. Early days, Ivanka likes black. I like white. Let's see who's going to be proven correct.
And the white bishop has moved all the way to the right-hand side of the board and is right in the enemy camp. And the reason they played this is to exchange off that very important dark squared bishop that is surrounding the black king, because it's an important protector.
Didn't you say, David, that Bobby Fischer liked the light squared bishop? Why would he like the light squared bishop and not the dark squared bishop?
That's right. I mean, I think he loved it when they were both together as a team. But in general, it's just because of how he opened the game. That white squared bishop was always the most powerful. In every opening he chose somehow in his line. I mean, he loved to push his pawn forward in front of his king, 2 squares on the first go. He always said, pawn to e4, that was the best by test. And it just happened that that bishop coordinates really well with the pawn here. Okay,
some exciting stuff there, David.
Ivanka's getting excited.
Yes, I am, because Magnus has in fact traded off those bishops, and now it's a queen that we see suspiciously close to the black king. I always get slightly concerned when there's a queen hovering around a king.
That's right. White's queen now so close to the black king. You can imagine if that queen gets some support, if it might be able to team up with a knight later, there might be a checkmate to the black king. So that's why we see Magnus Carlsen push a pawn in the centre. He's trying to kick this knight away. He's trying to kick this knight away from potentially linking up with his own queen. The white queen, it needs support, though. It can't checkmate all on its own. Black is just about defending. It's very brave, though, allowing a queen so near your king. Normally, I don't recommend this for people watching at home, but Magnus Carlsen, he'll think that he has enough defenders. He has this position under control. And there we see White's knight has retreated, so unable to link up with that queen to attack right now.
Yeah, he's breaking a little bit of the rule book here, Magnus, is because he pushed his central pawn forward, but I get a little bit worried because there is a nice square in the centre, in the middle of the board for White to put their pieces. And it cannot be, yes, exactly, and it cannot be attacked by pawns. So we call those squares outposts. And this is very risky strategy, because if it all goes wrong for Black, it means that White will simply put a piece there and Black cannot do anything about that piece.
That's right. This square, Ivanka mentions, this square cannot be controlled by black pawns. It's controlled by black pieces at the moment, but if those pieces disappear, then this is going to be the key square in this game. At the moment, I think Napomniachi, he's just wondering which piece should I improve. There's no immediate way to get at the black king, so therefore, when in doubt, just improve a piece. This rook is doing nothing. This rook could slide itself towards the centre, eyeing up the black queen. This is what I would personally do here as white, but he might be thinking, okay, black is also going to try his own tricks. He's going to try and develop his queen. There might be a check along a long diagonal. There's so many plans for both sides. It's just going to be a battle of wits here. Who can trick the other one?
So have you changed your mind after seeing that move, Jovanka, or those moves? Or would you still be black?
Would I still be black? Yes, I would still be black. Yeah. I would definitely be black. The only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is that the risk involved in Magnus's play, because like I said, if it all goes wrong, you cannot take those pawn moves backwards. But on the other hand, I do really like that rook that's on the open line. I love the knight on the edge of the board because that's threatening to take the bishop, or perhaps it's threatening to jump in to white side of the board by just hopping one square. Yeah, it's so complicated here.
That's right, it's so much tension. There's also a small trick, black's pawn that just advanced. White cannot capture it with the knight. I don't think we'll see that happen, but white does have to be slightly careful here. I would personally move that rook into the centre of the board, or I would keep my king nice and safe. I would tuck my king away in the corner there for white. Napomniachi, though, either way, he has to make a decision. He's 4 minutes below on the clock. We saw in the first game, Magnus played so fast, so confidently. Napomniachi, normally the shoe is on the other foot. Normally he's the one bossing things, putting the opponent under pressure. It feels like he's out of his comfort zone. Maybe he's been affected by that last game.
Mm-hmm. And I actually did see him also drinking from that white cup now. So he's drinking both from a yellow mug and a white mug.
This is being greedy, isn't it?
Chess is thirsty work.
Exactly. Well, he has to be careful because he's not allowed to go to the toilet during this game. And could it be a long game? I mean, as long as a rapid game can be.
Yeah, definitely. We see... white has 8 minutes here, black has 13 minutes, so the game could last over 20 minutes now. Also, the players do gain 10 seconds after every move, so technically the game could go on forever. You definitely don't want to be distracted by a bursting bladder later in the game when the things are really starting to heat up.
We actually have a question from Abdul Majid on Twitter who says, can you give more insight about how grandmasters prepare an opening for the tournament? Yeah, it's a very, very fascinating question.
That's right. Yeah, great question, Abdul. And I think there's a few different ways. So each player, throughout their careers, they'll have their favourite openings. Those will be openings, for example, we saw Napomniachi in the last game with black. It's an opening he's played since he was 8 years old. And over the years, he spent 25 years honing that opening, making sure there are no holes. He knows exactly what to do, no matter how his opponent tries to attack him. But occasionally, as we saw in that last game, occasionally you will find that you run into trouble. You don't want to be too predictable. These guys at the top level, they have backup plans. They have a second opening, a third opening. They know that if they run into trouble in their favourite lines, in their favourite variations, then they have something to fall back on. And I think we'll see that later on. It's nice to have an opening, for example, an attacking opening where you need to win. It's nice to have a solid opening if you just want to play for a draw. You have to be prepared for every scenario. And openings, remember, they're just about getting you into the middle game. It's not about trying to win early on. It's just trying to survive and getting a position that suits your style.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, David. But these grandmasters actually are very special creatures because let's not forget they have an army of seconds and they have people feeding them information. For the mere mortal, I would say, just like for David and for myself, the advice that I've been given, and I think it's fantastic advice, is you have two repertoires. So you have one that you play online that you can it's almost like it's brainless. You just make a few moves and you just develop your pieces very naturally. And then you have one that you play for over the board where you can dedicate a little bit more time to and you kind of a little bit more critical. Because in online chess, it's just about being quick on the clock. And if you're just making moves at tempo, where you don't have to be 2600 to find the best moves, that is the best way.
So, and I know the grandmasters and probably you guys have opening preparation, computers just packed with prep is what I hear everyone calling it. Yeah. I mean, how much prep can a chess player have in a computer?
A lot. We have databases with millions and millions of games. So, yeah, we do have but We don't memorize this.
Okay, that's good to hear.
This is all information that we have to hand, so that if we're preparing for someone, you can just pull up that database and you go, that is what I'm going to play, and then you reinforce your short-term memory. And if you have some repertoires, you've bought yourself a book, I know there's some brilliant courses on Chessable, which uses the science of spaced repetition. So every so often you get a test, a memory test, and then if you get it wrong, you have to repeat it and then repeat it again. So these are kind of tricks and techniques that we have in order to kind of keep the memory fresh.
Yeah. It's a bit like an exam. I have a 12-year-old student. She always says, OK, I need to revise my notes. Just before your big game, just before your exam, you just go over on the computer, you just play through things, repeat it. And that's the best way to learn.
All right, well, they're playing a lot of moves now. What's happening?
That's right. So if we bring up the board just to show what's happened over the last few turns, we left it after Black had advanced a pawn on this left-hand side. He is trying to advance even further to attack this white knight. Therefore, Napomniachi, he said, OK, I'm going to stop you advancing that pawn. He just pushed his pawn, covering this important square. Therefore, Magnus Carlsen said, OK, this bishop, I might as well take it off the board. It's no longer looking at my king now across this diagonal. That bishop was traded for a knight. That's roughly a fair trade. Knight's worth 3 points, bishop's worth 3 points. But then we see Black's opening the centre. Magnus Carlsen trying to open things up for this bishop. This bishop was useless, pointing against White's very strong pawns in the centre. He opened things up, a couple of pawns left the board, and now we see Jan Napomniachi take a timeout. He just shuffles his king to the corner. Very safe move. This king looking... I mean, actually, I'm not 100% sure I like it. This bishop is looking at that king down the long diagonal, but... For now, the king is very safe in that corner. Another good piece of advice for everyone, just keep your king tucked away behind pawns, and that's what Pomnyachie's doing.
Yeah. And also, keep an eye on your clock. Jan Napomniachi is now down to 6 minutes. It's half the time that Magnus Carlsen's got, so it might get tense for him here very soon.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to get tense. And one thing that really, really worries me, and it's not an immediate factor, but it's the fact that Black, if you count the pawns on the right-hand side of the board, Black has 4 pawns and White has 3, which means that if the game fast forwards and goes into an endgame where pieces get traded, then this extra pawn can become a passed pawn. Now, if you look on the left-hand side of the board, where you see White has 3 pawns and Black has 2, you can see that it's actually much more difficult for White to have that brilliant passed pawn. And that is something that is going to be perhaps not important now, but as soon as the game develops into the later stages, it's going to start to play more and more.
That's right. I completely agree with Jovanka. We've talked about doubled pawns on previous days. Doubled pawns are normally, they're only bad when they're weak and when they can be attacked. But on this occasion, White does have doubled pawns. We see there on the left side, just over on the B file, we call it. If you see the coordinates at the bottom board, the B, those pawns are doubled. They are potentially weak. They also, it's as if it's just one pawn. They don't, I mean, having 2 isn't that much better than having 1. Yeah. So White, long-term, is essentially down a pawn. We see Magnus Carlsen, meanwhile, just developing his queen, bringing his queen to a slightly more active square. Napomniachi looks surprised by that move.
Yeah, he does.
He does. And we have a tweet from Aid Kopi. He says, the Sicilian is White's worst nightmare. Seems Magnus is going all out for a win today. No, I have to agree. That was one of the reasons I did not like to play this move as White to open with my king pawn.
Yeah, the Sicilian defence as well. It's been the bane of my life. All of my strongest rivals, they all play it against me. It's so hard to find an advantage against that opening. This is Sicilian defence, and we see...
Oh, and the bar shifts quite a little bit for Magnus there with that move.
That's right. So Napomniachi, he puts his knight in the centre of the board. I think that's... Generally, it's quite a logical move. Knights are fantastic in the centre of the board. Jovanka has a name for those knights.
Octo Knights.
Octo Knight.
Although in the last game, my Octo Knight got into trouble.
Oh. All right. Well, Octo Knight needs to also pay attention then.
Exactly. Oh, that's a very, very aggressive move because that knight is headed into the centre, but it's headed to another destination.
That's right. If we bring up the board, we can see Napomniachi, his plan over the next 2 or 3 moves. He's just dropped his knight in the centre here. He wants to jump even further to help his queen. We talk about teamwork all the time in chess. You need to use all of your pieces together. And White's knight, for example, if Black is a bit lazy, a bit slow, if he just plays a move on the left side, not doing anything, we can see that White is going to jump in with his knight. Now we have a checkmate threat. White's queen and knight, they're the dream attacking combo. These two pieces ganging up against the same weak pawn, which is only defended by a black king. Again, if black is clumsy, if he just forgets about that, then we will see checkmate. The queen and knight together, they can wreak havoc if there aren't any defending pieces on the other side. And black needs to watch out for this one. Magnus Carlsen, he needs to be a bit careful of that knight joining the action.
Yeah, he needs to be worried about that. But yeah, we also have some beautiful compliments, Kaya and David.
So
we
nice.
have a compliment from Neely J. He says, loving the commentary. Even I can understand the games being a non-player, just a chess mum. So thank you, Neely, for watching. And we also got a compliment from Nicholas Alpuin. He says, chess champs, loving the coverage with a British accent. Best regards from Uruguay, South America.
Oh, fantastic. It's so nice to hear, especially when they like the commentary, you know, towards people my playing strength and everyone that doesn't necessarily have a chess rating. It's nice to actually understand what's going on the chessboard.
That's right, and people from all around the world. I've received messages from people in Montreal, in Canada, from people in Brazil. It's so nice to hear that everyone is enjoying the show, enjoying these games between some of the best players.
Yes, and Magnus has taken the warning that David gave him and has pushed his pawn one square up the board in order to stop that knight getting to that very, very dangerous square.
That's right. So it's now harder for white to use his queen and use his knight to team up. Black's last move, this pawn move, just one square advancing. He is covering this knight jump. That is a very classy move by Magnus Carlsen. He's seen his opponent's plan. That's what we have to do in chess. That's what the first thing I think when my opponent has made a move is, what does my opponent want next? And Magnus Carlsen, he's stopped Napomniachi's plan. Napomniachi needs a new plan. I just hope that he forgets, well, that he doesn't forget to use his rooks in this game. His queen is perfectly placed, his knights are well placed, his rooks are not active at all. So Napomniachi, with 4 minutes now, less than half of Magnus Carlsen's time, he needs to get his rooks active, he needs to get them into the game.
Yeah, absolutely. He does need to do it. I really love that last move by Magnus Carlsen. Such a beautiful little move. At the same time, defends absolutely everything. And again, Magnus has the long-term advantage, you have to remember. And I expect we're going to see one of those rooks get into the game. And you've called it, David. The rook has moved from the right-hand side of the board, and it is now challenging the black rook.
That's right. So the rooks are looking at each other on that line now. We could see a trade of all of the rooks. I think Jovanka mentioned earlier, black has a long-term advantage. Black's pawns are just slightly better than white's. That means that trades, exchanges do favour black in general. But as long as the queens remain on the board, as long as there's enough tension, white will always have, a way to play for tricks. We've mentioned in previous days, knights are the trickiest pieces, and Jan Napomniachi, he needs to just create some threats with those knights. He needs to set traps for Magnus Carlsen to fall into. It's all been a bit too comfortable for Magnus so far, especially after winning that last game. Magnus retreating his knight there. He's going to try and attack white's queen soon. Black's king is the only issue in his position. White's queen very near the black king. So if he can evict that queen, if he can kick the white queen away, then black will be very, very happy. Another nice move from Magnus.
A lovely move. Normally we're quite critical of retreats, but here this retreat has been designed with a purpose. And I just love where that knight is going to be headed, because it moved from the centre and it's going to attack that queen. It's also going to look at squares towards the white king. And I also just love this black queen that is on the right-hand side of the board, because it can, at the right moment, come in all the way in. It can't right now because there's a knight covering that square. But if it was allowed to, it could get in to a square very, very, very close to the white king. And that is dangerous.
And Jan Pomnyachien going under 3 minutes on his clock in something very complicated here. So this is about to get very interesting.
Yeah, roles have been reversed. Jan Napomniachi, we've seen nearly every game he's played this tournament in the preliminary stage, in the knockout stage. He's always ahead on the clock. Today, that's not the case. Magnus Carlsen putting him under pressure on the board and on time. I'm very worried for Napomniachi. As we mentioned, if he loses this one, it might be all over today. I don't think he's going to battle back from 2 games down. I don't think anybody's ever battled back from 2 games down against Magnus Carlsen. There we see a pair of rooks being traded. White has captured an enemy rook. That rook is immediately snapped off the board as well. Actually, Napomniachi is trying to trade off all the rooks, and we see the bar slightly edging towards Carlsen's direction. That's because Black has the long-term advantages. Black is the one who is, who should be slightly happier with the trades. I'm slightly surprised by Napomniachi's decision, but maybe he's hoping that the more trades happen, the more pieces come off the board. Maybe he can hold a draw. It's not what he wants, but it's better than losing right now. It's better than being knocked out.
Yeah, a loss would just be dreadful. And you can see that Magnus has taken off that knight with the bishop. And I'm expecting some big trades coming in. But I'm very worried. I'm very worried because Black's queen is just so beautiful.
That's right. White, the more pieces come off as well, the more kind of useless White's queen looks. White's queen tried to get at the Black king, but it just doesn't have any backup. It doesn't have any support trying to attack there. So nice trade by Magnus Carlsen, a bishop for a knight in the centre. White's pawn, we see with the green arrow, White's pawn has just captured a bishop. That pawn is isolated. It has no pawns around to defend it. Later on, that pawn might become weak in the centre of the board. Yeah, still in the balance, but Magnus Carlsen, he's the only one who can really try and push this one for victory. I think Napomniachi, we see by his face, looking a bit sad. He knows that he just has to buckle in and try and hold.
Does it look like Magnus is pushing for that win, actually?
It does look like Magnus could start grinding it down.
We know he loves to do, just slowly squeezing.
Exactly, make the right trades. You know, you can just imagine if all the pieces were traded off, then that extra pawn that Black has on the right-hand side of the board is going to start to count. So this is what gives Magnus the advantage.
And also the clock.
Also the clock. The clock is a ticking time bomb, isn't it? It goes down, and the more it goes down, the more likely we're going to see Napomniachi panic. So, and I've said it before many, many times, but I'm a big fan of that Black queen, because for me it's on a Goldilocks square. By Goldilocks I mean it's perfect. It's neither too hot nor too cold. So she can jump forward if she wants to get aggressive and come very close to the White king, but also she can centralize herself super easily along that line. So I mean, absolutely big fan of that. And
that's right. If we bring up the board just to illustrate Jovanka's point, Black's queen is actually a lot better than the White queen right now. This Black queen, it can jump into White's position in just one move. It can also just defend everything across this line. Meanwhile, White's queen is trying to get at the Black king, but everything's defended. It's going to have to retreat sooner rather than later. And personally, I'm just looking at this White pawn in the centre of the board. It's got nothing around it. Later on, it will be a weakness. It will be a target. White has these doubled pawns, which are a bit useless on the left side there. I'm very worried about the features, the long-term features of the position. Napomniachi, he needs to be very accurate. Meanwhile, Magnus, he's thinking here, how do I set some problems? How do I try and get Napomniachi to panic?
Yes. No, I mean, there's so many great things about Magnus's position. It's just, you know, I'm also looking at the potential of this knight, because there's one beautiful thing about this position is that those two pawns in the centre, they start to control squares. And if you look at Black's pawn, well, it controls two squares. And if you imagine a knight getting into those squares, then they would not only be in White's bottom half of the board, but also one square on the right-hand side would be looking at the king. So there's so many things, like potentially a great knight, potentially a great queen. And and also that, is the more I'm looking at, the more I'm liking it, and I'm thinking, you know, really.
You really think this is beautiful, don't you, Jovanka?
Yes,
that piece is so beautiful.
I always imagine these endgames a little bit like Red Riding Hood, like with a basket. I will have a better knight, I will have a better queen. And you know, those little advantages, they actually collectively build up to something actually winning.
That's right, and we have seen the last pair of rooks leave the board. So now each side just has a queen, each side just has a knight. We've mentioned before, the knight and the queen, they team up so well together. The knight is the only piece which can move in ways that the queen can't. White, meanwhile, is trying to sneak into the Black position with his queen. Black just advances his king. That's a bit risky. Normally, we don't want to advance our king when the opponent has a queen on the board. But Magnus, he knows that knights are a king's best friend. His knight, Black's knight, next to his king right now, is a great defender. So Magnus, he's got no fear here. Also, we should mention the bar, the green bar below, below me right now. It is the computer evaluation. The evaluation of the computer. The computer thinks that the position is roughly level, but it's very slightly in Black's favour. That means, yes, with best play, with perfect play, the position should be a draw. But we've mentioned Black is the one with the long-term advantages. White is the one on the defensive. So maybe he can hold, but he'll have to be very, very accurate in Napomniachi.
Yes, and
Magnus his knight.
Yes. He's moved his knight, yes.
That's right. He's slowly starting to advance his knight, heading towards the centre. Another very logical thing to do. A very sensible move there from Napomniachi. I think he's just trying to... He's... OK, and
Magnus is doing the same. Do you remember I was talking about those beautiful squares for the knights? Both knights are going to go into their most perfect squares, and there will be octo knights supported by pawns.
Well, someone should just print out this board and give to Ivanka so you can put on the wall this beautiful, beautiful chess game.
But it's not just me that's admiring Magnus Carlsen's technique. We also have a tweet from Mustafa Bahar who says, as a die-hard fan of Magnus Carlsen, I enjoy his way of cool, calm, collected way of playing style. The consistency on his level of attention is to every single element related to chess is impeccable. What a blessed era to be alive.
Ah, yes. Definitely. And they are making moves. I mean, we are in the era of maybe the greatest chess player ever. And we know maybe the greatest football player ever died a few days ago. So we are lucky to be alive in this era. And wow, what is happening on the board? I see the bar shifting over to Napomniachi's side.
That's right. A bit of a strange move there by Magnus Carlsen. He just advanced his knight 2 moves ago, but now he has retreated again, so he's actually lost a bit of time. He's trying to trade off White's knight here in the centre of the board. Black wants to exchange pieces. We mentioned long-term, Black is doing great, so Black wants to trade off pieces. But maybe White has an opportunity here. Maybe White can say, I'm not going to let you trade knights, but I will let you trade queens. And Napomniachi, he's frowning. Maybe he's seen this move. He could zoom his queen all the way up the board.
And he's done it. And the queen's going to get traded.
The queens have been traded. Now we see White is the one attacking. This pawn cannot be defended. White is about to win a pawn on the left side of the board. I think Magnus Carlsen, he just forgot that this pawn would disappear, and he's trying to fight back.
Has he blundered?
Yes.
Terribly.
Yes.
Just as we were saying, he's great at keeping control. He's lost control completely. And we see Black, he was going for this central pawn. He saw this pawn was not defended. I mentioned it earlier. But if Black takes it now, his whole left-hand side will disappear. Suddenly, White will have 3 against none. Those pawns will... I mean, it's going to be a pawn race. Those pawns will run down the board.
Is Magnus now losing this game?
It's a race, Kaya. It's a complete race because Magnus is a pawn down, but you can see he's using that extra pawn that he has in the centre and he's trying to get them motoring, and it all will turn on whether Pomnyachien can mobilise the pawns on the left-hand side of the board. If they can get going, well, then I think it will be game over for Magnus.
That's right. If we imagine the board splits into halves, on the right side, Magnus has a 4 versus 3 advantage, but that's very difficult. It's very difficult to create one big important pawn. Napomniachi, he has a 3 versus 1 advantage on the left side, and that's why now we will see those pawns starting to advance. There we go. White has advanced a pawn on the left side, right at the corner there. White is going to try and make use of that 3 versus 1 advantage. It's a bit like sport now. It's a bit like football. White is outmatched. He's outnumbering Black on that left side. It's looking difficult for Magnus. He just has to hold that that left side and hope that his counterplay, that he can distract his opponent on the right side of the board. It's difficult. It's going to be a race, as Jovanka mentioned. It's going to come down to 1 move, 2 moves, and Napomniachi's time is ticking.
Definitely is.
He's turned the position around. He needs to make sure that he's quick enough now, though.
They have to navigate with so little time on the clock, only 2 minutes and 20 seconds for Napomniachi now. The clock is ticking, but he is in a winning position. Can he find the right moves with so little time on the clock?
It's tricky because it all depends on counting and calculation, and you have to be accurate. It's very difficult to be accurate when you don't have so much time on the clock, and you're more likely to play instinctively and perhaps not work everything out.
That's right. And although White's position is winning, he does have an extra pawn right now. The problem is, if all of the pawns disappear, even if Black's knight disappears, if it ends up with White just having a king and just having a knight, that's not enough material to give checkmate at the end of the game. So he needs to make sure that either he gets a pawn to the end of the board and makes a new queen, or he wins the black knight before that, but keeping pawns on the board. He needs to keep pawns. And there we see Magnus Carlsen trading off a set of pawns. Magnus edging closer to the draw very slightly. White giving a check now with his knight. Black's king had to move.
We definitely see on the computer that this is a huge advantage for Black, but with a lot more time on the clock, can Magnus now, will he actually try to play fast so that Jan Napomniachi doesn't have time on his clock to do the thinking that needs to be done here?
Yes, I mean, it looks that way. He also needs to be very accurate himself. So it's a very fine balance between playing moves that are very quickly and playing good moves. So, OK, Napomniachi moving his knight. He's getting ready to come in with his king to attack that pawn, that black pawn in the middle of the board.
That's right. That's actually a great move. If we pull the board up, just while Magnus is thinking here, White's knight is actually targeting both of Black's pawns potentially. White's, that last move is a very classy move by White. Napomniachi playing very accurately so far. This knight is tying down Black's king to protect these pawns. Meanwhile, White's going to use his corner pawn as a distraction. That pawn is actually not far from the end of the board now. It's got no rival. It's going to race to its end goal. It wants to become a queen. Knights also are very bad at stopping these corner pawns. Black's knight is going to struggle to stop this pawn because it can only stop it from one side. Pawns in the middle are easy to stop for knights. You can stop it from the right, the left, the centre. But these corner pawns, knights are especially bad against them. That is what White is going to hope for. That's what Napomniachi needs to rely on to win, this pawn on the left side. Yeah.
Wow, the race is on. And I will also mention before we take that move that Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura have started playing their second game. The first ended in a draw. They are playing their second. We will go to that later. What's happening here, David?
Well, it's crazy, isn't it? The White King has come forward to help the knight win that black pawn in the centre. And Magnus has gone on the counterattack. He wants to win one of White's pawns on the left-hand side of the board.
That's right, and one of Black's pawns has disappeared here. That pawn in the centre has disappeared. Magnus Carlsen, he needs to just try and get rid of all of White's remaining pawns. White has 4 pawns left. Black needs to sacrifice his knight for some of those pawns. He needs to trade off as many as possible. If he can get rid of all of those pawns, even at the cost of his knight, it will be a draw, but it's not easy. White still has just enough pawns left to try and win this one. We see the bar as well there. The computer thinks 4.6 advantage. That is a winning advantage for White, but the margin for error is so small. One mistake, and that could drop back down to 0.
And under 2 minutes on the clock for Jan Napomniachi there, who is now thinking about how he can win this game. That race.
He has to keep his nerves calm because what we said
It looks like he does. He looks very calm, actually.
Yeah, he does. He does because he can't believe his luck. He was first of all grinding, suffering a little bit, and now he's suddenly winning. But yes, he has to be watchful because knights are the craftiest pieces on the board. They jump around and they jump backwards, forwards, and sideways. And yeah, as David says, if Magnus manages to sacrifice his knight and win both of those pawns, that is it. It's going to be a draw.
That's right. And we see Black has captured one of White's pawns on the left there. I think White is going to capture a pawn as well. Black's last remaining pawn is about to disappear from the board very shortly. It's going to be a case of can Black's... OK, not sure about that last move.
The computer hates it.
Yeah, that's the thing. The one move is the difference between winning and losing. The problem for White now is that Black is going to trade his knight. He's going to sacrifice his knight for White's remaining pawn on the right there, the bottom pawn.
Oh, look at Jan Napomniachi. He realizes he blundered a winning position here.
That's right.
Oh, no. It just isn't his day.
It isn't his day. He could have just taken that pawn last move, but he waited one move. He was just too slow.
He didn't want to calculate what would happen if he captured that pawn. And so instead, OK, it is as you called it, David. The knight has sacrificed itself, and now that king is going to make a beeline for the remaining white pawn.
That's right.
And they've agreed a draw.
The players have agreed a draw. Black's king, unfortunately for Napomniachi, Black's king is just going to come up and gobble that pawn now on the left side. Once that pawn disappears, White only has a knight left. That's not enough material left to checkmate. Napomniachi, he had it, just one move. He just relaxed too soon. One move was the difference there.
And Magnus Carlsen, did he actually get really, really lucky there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He'll be furious with himself because, first of all, he was in the driving seat controlling the state of play, and then suddenly he let it slip and he had to defend this terrible ending. It became worse and worse until it was absolutely losing, and then he got away with it. One bad move and it ended up a draw.
And they are sitting still by the computers, both players, and probably looking at this. They both made big mistakes in this game.
Yeah, that's right. Magnus Carlsen, I think at one point he just didn't know, should he play for the win or should he play safe and play for the draw? Because he's in the lead today. And I think that's what cost Magnus Carlsen, and that's what forced him into that mistake earlier on. Napomniachi, he spotted his chance, he seized on it. He was so close to the win at the end there, but he just didn't see that Black could sacrifice his knight and that his remaining pawn would disappear. Napomniachi, with a bit more time, he would have won that game.
And I would have actually loved if we could just look at that, where it all went wrong here for Napomniachi. You said he was in the race for the win here to get that pawn over the board to be a queen, and then somehow he blundered this. What happened?
That's right. So if we bring up the board, we can see this is the key position, very close to the end. Actually, only 3 or 4 moves before the end of the game, before the players agreed to draw. In this position, White was too slow. He moved his knight to try and win this black pawn. He had a couple of options. He could have just taken this pawn off the board, or maybe an even classier move. He could have centralized his king. The main thing is you need to keep this pawn. You need to also keep this pawn. At the moment, this pawn will kind of distract the black knight, and once White wins this last remaining black pawn, which is doomed, it will drop off the board shortly. Once that pawn disappears, White's other pawn will race up the board, and Black won't be able to stop both of those 2 white pawns. Instead, he made a huge mistake. He dropped his knight forward, allowing a knight fork. We call these forks a double attack. Black gave a check, attacking the white king, attacking the pawn, and he was able to sacrifice his knight for that remaining pawn and bring his king closer to the last remaining pawn. Unfortunately, the players had to agree to draw here because White's last pawn is dropping off. Just one move, one accurate move, he would have been able to keep his last remaining pawn and he would have been able to win the game. But one move of carelessness.
Yes, one slip, yeah.
And I think actually we have, yes, look at this. Napomniachi has made the move, and there he realizes it was a blunder. I said it. I mean, he's just having a really bad day so far. First day of semifinals, and it's just not working for him so far.
Sometimes it happens. You just have a bad day at the office. But, OK, he can't focus on those previous 2 games. He has to look forward, and I'm sure he's going to do that.
So the score now is 1.5 points for Magnus Carlsen after 2 games. Jan Napomniachi has that half a point. And if Magnus Carlsen wins the next game, the 3rd game, then actually the match of today is over. Magnus Carlsen will have 2.5 points, and he will be the winner of day 1 in the semifinal match. All right, well, there is another semifinal match going on. All right, here we see the scores. So Magnus Carlsen with that 1.5 points. Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So has only finished 1 game. They drew that game, so they have half a point each, and they are right now playing that 2nd game, and we will go into that game. And I'm just looking at the bar, David. I can see it is very significantly over to Wesley So's side. Does that mean he is winning this All-American battle?
That's right, and I think we saw just a moment ago as well on Nakamura's face, he looked a bit pained. He knows that he's struggling in this position. The first thing I try to do in any position is I try to count the pawns, count the pieces. At the moment, it is all level, but we do notice that Black has weaknesses in the position. If we bring up the board, we can see that what White's plan will be over the next few moves. He's going to try and get at this pawn. At the moment, it might be able to capture this pawn. He hasn't captured it yet. He just centralizes his bishop. Black has a very weak pawn. It's in White's territory. That means it just can't be defended. It will drop off the board later.
Black has really taken some risk in advancing that pawn. You can see Hikaru is trying to hold on to that pawn. But like you said, I really love White's position. And I really like the fact that White has a huge pawn right in the Black enemy camp. You can see it there. That's the one. And I love that pawn. When White has a pawn like that, that means one thing. It means that you've got to take space. You've got to take as much space by advancing your pawns, by depositing your pieces in the enemy camp. So, yeah, like I said, there it controls 2 squares in the centre. David, can you highlight those squares for me? Perfect. And if White manages to get a knight in any of those squares, well, God, goodness me, it's going to be so good. And I just really love Wesley's position.
That's right. If White gets a knight into one of those 2 squares that we just highlighted, that will be game over. And actually, I like the idea of maybe advancing White's knight now slightly towards the Black king.
Yep.
Black's king, if we notice on the right side there, it has no pieces around to defend it. There we go. White has dropped.
It's in. And when you get a knight on that square, I think it was Kasparov who said it was worth a pawn.
That's right.
So it's so good. You have a lot of advantage.
And I just want to bring in the ding, 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 because Hikaru Nakamura has got under 5 minutes on his clock, and Wesley So is about to do it as well. So there will be... the time is in play here. The clock is in play, definitely.
Yep, he will be feeling the pressure.
That's
he
right.
will be looking at that clock and having to make quick decisions.
Yeah, Nakamura is good enough to realise that he is in trouble here. He had to tie up his bishops on that left-hand side just to protect that pawn. We highlighted that weak pawn a moment ago, and Black's bishops now, they're offside. They're just not doing anything on the left. Meanwhile, White is attacking on the right. I mean, this knight move is a beautiful knight. This is a beautiful leap forward. Now attacking the Black king, potentially, going to highlight this weak pawn. White's queen is also going to use a bit of teamwork. He's going to try and sneak into the Black position.
Yeah, and just look at that bishop as well that that White has in the centre. That could...
Dominating everything.
It could, in the right circumstances, be unleashed into a monster.
That's right. All of White's pieces doing a great job. Black's king needs defenders around it. But at the moment, Black's bishops, they're just doing nothing here on the left. Those bishops just hitting thin air, hitting their own pawns. White's pieces, they're more centralised. They're coordinating better. This is just... yeah, Wesley So has a huge advantage right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a tweet from Carl Portman who says... Chess champs, some people say that chess is dead with the advent of computer chess engines. Nonsense! Never exclude the human factors. The mistakes are all there waiting to be made. Nice quote by Tartakova there.
Yeah, fantastic. And we know Hikaru Nakamura, he's all about computer chess. That's about all he plays, the computer chess. And he would be the favourite in this matchup against Wesley So, but Wesley So looking very good here.
Yeah, that's right. Hikaru Nakamura, I think he was one of the first to really... Oh, I don't like that last move, but we'll come to it in a moment.
OK, yes.
OK, yeah, Nakamura was one of the first to learn purely by playing online, I was going to say, and he's the first to really embrace computer chess. He's kind of a pioneer. People just followed on from him to play online. We have seen the last position, though.
And we see him nodding. What does this mean?
Nakamura, yeah, it means that he's slightly more confident now. And that's because Wesley So has repeated the position. He retreated his knight. He didn't need to. If we just bring things up, Nakamura, he dropped his bishop back to attack this knight. White could leave it. He could just leave that knight. He could start going for this weak pawn that we were talking about. White has a huge advantage. He's just going to win a pawn. Instead, Wesley So, he retreated his knight, allowing Black to bring the bishop back. This is the second time we've seen this position. If the position repeats itself again for a third time, the game is automatically declared a draw. Wesley So, let's just hope that he's feeling brave and he goes for the win because he has a huge advantage.
He's put his knight there and now the bishop will go back. And he has done what you said.
Wow.
I breathed a huge sigh of relief there because for a second, Wesley was playing with us, telling us that maybe he was going to go for a draw. But no, he
has realised he has a great position here. OK.
Yeah, he knows that he has a great position. It was just, we've seen Wesley be very pragmatic before and just take draws in positions where he was winning. But OK.
Yeah, for example, yesterday, Wesley So, he went to the Armageddon match against Radjabov and he was completely winning. He had an extra rook, but he still took the draw because he knew that was enough for him to win. Today, I'm glad he's playing for the win, though. He knows that he won't get too many chances against Nakamura and he has to take those chances when they come. Nakamura there advancing with his queen 1 square. He's aiming at a pawn on the left side there, one of White's unprotected pawns. But
does the computer now think White is completely winning this?
That's right. I think White has actually several ways to win this position. Maybe if we bring up the analysis board, we can talk about White's options. Black's last move, attacking this pawn. It's not defended, but that pawn is doing nothing. Black will have to lose a lot of time with his queen if he wants to go after that pawn. Meanwhile, White, for example, could just shuffle his rook across 2 squares.
I love that move. And then you're threatening. Because you can't... One thing that we have to point out, you can't actually take that pawn now because there will be a pin. The bishop will come out and you can see those two rooks are on the same diagonal. So that's not possible. So I love your move of doubling along that line.
Rooks love a bit of teamwork, and if you can double up your rooks, if you can put them on the same line as each other, that is normally a good sign. I think that would be an extremely strong move here from Wesley So.
Yeah.
He's got a bit of extra time here. OK, now the clocks have equalised. The only thing that can hold him back here is if he panics. Nakamura can be a scary opponent when you've only got 1 minute on your clock. He finds that move. He has doubled up his rooks on the same line there. Very strong play by Wesley So.
And you can just see those two rooks are going to be so powerful once the line is clear. And I love the next move because Hikaru has defended that pawn. But Wesley So is not content with being dominant on the left-hand side of the board. He's gone to the right as well, just to overstretch Hikaru Nakamura.
That's right. Imagine you're being, as Nakamura now, you're being attacked from the right, attacked from the left.
And you're worse in the centre as well.
and you're worse in the centre of the board. Everything is going wrong for him. We notice as well, as soon as Hikaru brought his bishops to the left side, Wesley So attacks on the right side, and there's a huge threat in the position.
Exactly. Oh, OK. So Hikaru has spotted that.
That's right. If we bring up the board just very quickly, we can see Wesley So he has a huge threat. He just brought his queen forward. He's threatening to move this knight now. He's threatening to give a check to the black king. And more importantly, once he moves that knight, there would be a discovered attack against the black queen. This queen is not protected, so black would lose a queen in that position. Therefore, Nakamura, he sidesteps. There's no way to give check with the knight right now. But white has a few winning moves. He could just take this pawn with the queen. Or he's sacrificed the bishop. He's going for checkmate. He's played bishop takes pawn, sacrificing itself. If the pawn takes the bishop, there's a few ways to win. He can just sneak into the position with his queen. Queen and knight, we've mentioned it in other games. We mentioned it in this one. Queen and knight together, they're going to give checkmate. Such great teamwork.
Yes, and there's just no way that queen, the black queen, can hop over to protect her king. You know, we have this kind of jokey saying, a queen always protects her man. But here the black pieces cannot do that because that knight is so powerful. You know, Kasparov said a knight on that square is worth at least a pawn. And yeah, just look at Hikaru. He knows it's over.
I mean, yeah, look at Hikaru's face. He's nodding, he's shaking his head, and we know
he's taken the bishop, and Wesley has taken the pawn, and now the king has sidestepped.
That's right. All Wesley needs to do now is bring one of his rooks into the attack. At the moment, he's got a queen attacking, he's got a knight attacking, but the rooks aren't helping. Look at the black king. It has no defenders around it. It just needs one more attacking piece to overwhelm black's defences. So at the moment, as white, I would just want to bring one of those rooks towards the black king. There's a few ways of doing it. I think Wesley, he just needs to be slightly careful and he needs to play quickly. But once one of those rooks enters the game, that will be over.
Yes.
All right. Well, we know from the interview with Wesley So yesterday, he said he would not have Hikaru Nakamura's webcam up on his screen. He did not want to see Hikaru Nakamura because he makes so many faces and he shakes, and you can definitely see now he is not happy with the position for himself.
Yes, he knows that he's on his last legs. There's no way going back and saving this. But yeah, absolutely, David's called it there. If Wesley manages to get one of the rooks to stand opposite the black king, it will be game over. There is nothing to be done. So now, yeah, he's going to do it. The rook has moved and it wants to take a little bit of a long route, but I think it's going to get there.
That's right. If we bring up the board, we can see the route of this white rook. This rook, it takes a while, but there's just two moves now. If the rook can just jump up one square and shift itself across, if it can lift itself across, this will get at the black king. This will end up in checkmate.
Yeah.
So Nakamura, he needs to try and stop this. I don't think there's a way to stop this. He just doesn't have any protection around his own king.
Yeah. And, you know, you can just have a look at black's extra materials. There are two bishops, which are normally really powerful, but they're on the wrong side of the board. They're on the left-hand side, and there's no way that those two bishops can ever go back to help the king. So you can just imagine if the king could talk and put out a call of distress, not one single piece could answer his aid. They were like, well, sorry, mate. You're on your own.
That's right. And Hikaru, he's trying his best to get rid of the attacking pieces. He's lifted up his rook. He's going to take that white knight next move, no matter what, pretty much. But I don't think that's going to help Wesley, so he can just lift his rook up again. Nakamura, he's trying his best, but once that rook joins the action, that will be the end of the game. We can see Nakamura, we talked about his faces many, many times before. He has different faces for different occasions, but once he starts to exhale a lot, breathe out a lot, he knows it's all over.
And the rook has moved up and... Wesley.
Wow, Wesley, so he doesn't even capture the black rook last move. I would have taken that rook off.
I would have given a check and then taken it.
Instead, Wesley, he leaves the black rook on the board. He's going for checkmate. That queen, white's rook. They're just going to drive up the board, and checkmate is coming. Black was going to have to lose his queen just to survive a few more moves. I think this one won't go on too much longer. Checkmate is coming.
Yes, OK, we're going to see it, Kaya. And now
we will see the
join
check.
In.
Oh!
did Hikaru react like he didn't see that check?
Just jumps off his chair, and in the all-American semi-final battle between Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura, Wesley So is now in the driver's seat. He is 1 point up. He won the second game. Wow, that is impressive by Wesley against the online king, Hikaru Nakamura.
Very impressive by Wesley. Also, he overcame his own demons. Sometimes he's his own worst enemy. He takes draws in great positions. But this time, no, he turned down the chance to make a draw, and he went for the win. Very impressive stuff.
All right. Well, David, I think we need to go. It was fast in the end there. It was dramatic in the end there. Can you actually show us where Wesley got the win here?
Sure, yes, Kaya. I mean, it was so fast, so dramatic, and it all started from a big sacrifice. Wesley So in this position, we talked about his attacking pieces. He has a queen attack. Well, he has a queen attacking. He has a knight attacking. And he also has this bishop, and therefore he decided now is the time. I'm going to break open the defenses of the Black King. They're going to destroy that shelter. He sacrifices the bishop for a pawn. That bishop has to be taken. Now he takes a pawn with his queen. This queen is going to jump up the board, deliver checkmate very shortly. Therefore, Nakamura, he had to stop that. He had to shuffle his king across, defend this key square. All Wesley needs now is to bring another piece. Calm move, just bringing one of his pieces into the game. For everyone at home, you should always do this. Improve your pieces when you can. And Wesley So just shuffles his rook across. This rook going to join the attack and deliver the killing blow. And that's what we see in the game. Nakamura, he tried to remove one of White's attackers, but that didn't help. He got rid of this knight. Wesley said, no, I don't care. I'm just going to use my queen and my rook together. This queen, this rook, they're going to team up and penetrate the black position. And we saw that in this position after White gave a check. Remember this check, the queen is defended by the white rook. Black's king has to run away. There's no way to block. White gave a check, and here Nakamura resigned because checkmate is coming. There's only one safe square for this king. The king has to step forward. Wesley would give another check with his rook. The rook is again protected by the queen. The king has to step back. White could now give another check. The rook and queen, they're protecting each other at every turn. Such great teamwork. Giving check to the black king. The king has to step back, no matter where it goes. If it goes this way or this way, the same checkmate is coming. White will just lift his rook up to give checkmate. The rook protected by its queen, and the black king can no longer escape. Checkmate ends the game. That's beautiful finish.
It is a beautiful finish, and that checkmate even has a name.
Oh, what is it?
It's called the kill box.
Ooh.
It sounds quite venomous, doesn't it? The kill box.
And we did see Hikaru Nakamura's reaction there. That was devastating to him. So, all right, Hikaru Nakamura versus Wesley So. Wesley So is up by 1 point after 2 games. And now we see Magnus Carlsen versus Jan Napomniachi. Magnus Carlsen also up by 1 point after 2 games. They are now playing the 3rd game. And if Magnus Carlsen wins this game, then the match for the first day, it will be over. Magnus Carlsen will be the winner of day 1. If this is a draw or Jan Pomnyachien wins, then we will have a 4th game. All right. Well, they have started, David. What are we seeing on the board here?
That's right. So we do see a repeat of the opening from the first game. We mentioned it a couple of times. The opening is called the Grunfeld defense. This normally signifies that black is happy to let white have the center, but black is going to counterattack. And we see early on, if we bring up the analysis board, black has brought his queen into the game very, very early. We don't normally want to do this at home because the queen will get attacked. We saw in this position, white has the center. White controls the center, therefore black needs to play fast. You can't let your opponent control the midfield, the center of the board. You need to counterattack. Therefore, black gave a check. This is a check to the king. White block this check. There's 3 ways of dealing with the check. You either have to run away with your king, you have to block, or you have to capture the attacking piece. This time, white chose to block, attacking the white queen, and the queen enters the white camp. This is very controversial. I've actually studied this position myself. I prefer white. Black's queen, it looks very nice in the white camp, but later it will get kicked about. It will get attacked by white's bishop, or it will get attacked by white's rook. Meanwhile, black is just hoping that his pressure on the center, his knight is attacking this pawn, his bishop is attacking this pawn. It's all about the fight for the center right now. And also white needs to he needs to remember, that his king isn't entirely safe in the center of the board. If white can get that king to safety and deal with that pressure on his center, white will be doing very, very well.
Yes.
All right, well, Napomniachi, he needs to strike back here if he's going to be able to fight back in the semi-final match day 1. And, well, he did... how did it end in the quarterfinals? He won the first day, didn't he? No, he struck back.
He lost the first day, and then he struck back on the second day.
That's what happened with him.
He's the king of the comebacks.
Yes.
But yeah, this is against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen is somehow, he's the boss. He's the one who kept his cool. He's the only one who went into the quarterfinals with a lead and actually got through and did the job.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And we did see him thinking very intensively there, like with his head in his hands. Is this still opening preparation he's thinking about trying to memorize?
Yeah, this is very much still opening preparation, and now Magnus is the one who has to recall his preparation. And like David said, it's all a battle about the centre. White, as you can see, with those 2 pawns in the middle of the board, white will try to reinforce that, hold it, and black will do everything he can to destabilise that. Because if white manages to make the position completely stable, then black is in big, big, big trouble, because those pawns control so many squares. So Magnus now has to just remember what he has prepared. I think he knows. This is the thing with Magnus I've realised in this tournament. He just lets his opponents wait a little bit before he unleashes the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Before he just bamboozles them. Yes. Your favorite word, Ivanka. I like that word now too. Bamboozle his opponents. All right. Well, actually, we've been talking a lot about memorizing today. And you told me, I'm very glad to hear that chess players aren't complete robots just remembering everything they ever saw on a chessboard. You actually go into preparations and then you do the short time memorizing. But what is your best tip for regular people to like get better at memorizing stuff?
Well, my tip would be to either write things down or to use websites such as Chessable, which uses the science of spaced repetition learning, so where you repeat things again and again. And so this one will identify your weaknesses and your strengths. So if you can't remember this one line, it will force you to keep playing that one line again and again. And so eventually you'll get it. I mean, because I really like that, because chess is all about patterns as well. Because once you memorize that pattern, those things don't tend to escape you anymore.
What are your techniques, David, for memorizing?
I completely agree. It's all about practice, whether that's playing through things on a board. I personally learn from the heat of battle. I like to play games. For example, on Chess24, you can go to the play zone. You can play against other people, other humans. The more you practice against them, the more you try and hone your openings. You'll learn what they normally do against your openings. You'll learn what the most common replies are to your favourite moves. And that's how I learn. That's how I remember things. I always... rather than remember, what I've written down, I just think, oh, I had this game 2 years ago against a certain opponent. I just remember that the feeling, the intimacy of that battle. It's that feeling which really kind of spurs me on.
And Magnus did remember. He made a move, and Napomniachi answered, "What's happening on the board now?"
We could. I think the game is about to end. Actually,
in a draw.
Yeah,
yes.
Prematurely with a repetition of moves. We were talking about spaced repetition, repeating things to remember. But this time, Jan Napomniachi, he has the option to repeat the position for a third time. If he gives a check with his queen, if he just moves his queen 2 squares up there, giving a check to the white king along the diagonal, that'll be the third time we reach that position, and the game will be declared a draw. Napomniachi, he is behind, though. Normally a draw against the world champion is great, especially with the black pieces. But this time, he needs to think about the match situation.
He does need to think about this match situation. Oh, Magnus is really putting the dilemmas into Napomniachi's court because, like, does he accept the draw and then maybe he takes his chances when Napomniachi has the white pieces, or does he have to fight for the initiative right now, even with the black pieces?
Yeah, and personally, if I were Napomniachi, I'd be looking at the clock situation as well. He has 6 minutes more on the clock, almost. He's 6 minutes more. Magnus Carlsen is clearly a bit unfamiliar with this exact opening line, with what we've got on the board. So I would be taking all of that into consideration. I would forget the fact that he's black. I would forget the fact that normally a draw with black is a great result. I would play for the win. It feels like this is a moment to strike. If he takes it all down to the next game, that's a lot of pressure to put on himself. He'll have the white pieces, yes, but that's not enough to guarantee that you'll get winning chances against Magnus Carlsen. It feels like now is the moment. He shouldn't be thinking that long. He should just play a move, any move. He needs to show Magnus that he's not scared and play for that win.
All right, so excited about his next move now. What are we looking for from Jan Napomniachi now as a sign that he will be fighting?
I think any move, apart from moving his queen and giving check, any other move would mean that he's up for a fight. For example, if we bring up the board, we should keep on the players, though, just in case we see the reactions to a draw. I would just move my rook towards the centre, eyeing up the white queen. We've talked about rooks on open lines. This is what I would do. There are other moves. You could just develop your bishop, just improve a piece. When in doubt, improve a piece. Just don't go for that draw, Napomniachi, because you might live to regret it.
All right, we are so excited to see what Jan Napomniachi chooses. He does need a win in either this game or the next game if he is going to get back in the first match in the semifinal against Magnus Carlsen. All right, and he is thinking that the time is running. He's drinking a little bit. He's wondering, am I going to take this intro draw and just fight in the last game, or will I start the fighting already here? All right. Let's see what he chooses.
That's right. And Magnus Carlsen, he looks a bit confused right now. Maybe he thinks the position's already repeated itself 3 times. If I just check that, it looks like the position hasn't been repeated 3 times yet. Magnus Carlsen thinks this should already be a draw. So maybe that's why Magnus is looking confused right now. Very tense moment here. It feels like a critical moment in the Pomnyachie's tournament. In order to... Well, actually, both players looking confused here. I'm wondering if they're both just going to go for the draw and end the game. Neither of them look like that. Magnus, he just reacted there. He looked angry.
Yeah, yeah.
He kind of shouted at the screen.
And we know Magnus Carlsen hates to play these draws. He wants to fight and fight and fight. And even if it's good for him that this ends in a draw, if it does, then he's actually trying to shout to Jan Napomniachi, come on, you fool.
Yeah,
fight.
Exactly. I don't really know what's happening right now. Both players looking confused.
Yes, they are.
Maybe he's shouting at himself. Maybe he's shouting at his opponent.
Maybe he's shouting at the computer.
Oh, I wish we had sound on these players now.
Maybe not.
Well, yeah. All right, what is happening? Jan Napomniachi is still thinking. We are looking out for that queen move that would end up in a draw if he repeats the position one more time. He is still thinking.
That's right. I mean, the only thing I can really think here that Magnus is trying to complain about is the fact maybe he thinks the position's already repeated itself 3 times, but the fact is it hasn't. Last time this position, I mean, this is the second time the position has been retreated. Last time his queen was back on its starting square the first time. Maybe he's just been slightly confused there. It can be confusing trying to count whether this position's been reached before. For example, world number 2, Fabiano Caruana, once tried to claim against me that the position had repeated 3 times, but it hadn't. He got slightly confused about the placement of one piece.
And we have that move.
We have a move. It is a queen check. It's not the same queen check that we saw earlier, so it's a slightly different position, but it all depends. If Magnus Carlsen blocks with his bishop, Napomniachi, he's got to decide where to put his queen now. If he puts it back from where it came from...
Oh, he's changed his mind. He's made a different move.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to have...
So we will have a fight.
David. Yes.
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 All right. Well, Jan Napomniachi spent a lot of time, almost 5 minutes, thinking about, should I go into this draw or make a different move? Now he he actually does have 12 minutes on the clock.
That's right. I think there was maybe the players, they were both confused. I think the clock just deducted a couple of minutes there from Napomniachi.
Okay, because it fooled me too. All right, well, there you see. That's probably why they were shouting. The clocks were not correct. Are they correct now? Let's hope they are.
I think they are correct now. That's one question for you to ask the players later, Kaya.
Yes.
What that confusion was about. Meanwhile, Black has put his queen on a different square, so we haven't seen the same position 3 times. The game will go on. Great fighting spirit from Napomniachi.
And guys, I have to tell you, it does seem like chess has captured the imagination of the world. It is everywhere. And we have this amazing tweet from the Bishop, Mark O'Donnell, who says, look, I can move diagonally.
a light squared bishop.
I can move diagonally on this floor. Oh, it's brilliant.
That's your kind of humor, obviously.
Totally.
Oh, fantastic. I love it when we get pictures as well. Fantastic.
Me too. I absolutely love pictures, the comments, the tweets, move suggestions, anything, you know. And of course, we in the studio are really loving that. And you can join in the fun and the jokes and the conversation by tweeting us on this hashtag #ChessChamps.
Please do that as we are waiting for Magnus Carlsen's move. He is under 8 minutes now, no drama on the clock yet. He has been confused probably and wondering, will this go into a draw or not? Now, he has to keep fighting in this game. Is it looking okay for him?
Yes, it's still early days. Magnus, he does have this pressure. We talked about those 2 pawns, those 2 white pawns in the centre of the board. One of them is attacked right now by a black knight, by a black bishop, by the queen as well. So white has to deal with that pressure. Magnus Carlsen, he doesn't look fully focused right now. Maybe he thought the game was about to end. He needs to get back into the game. He needs to refocus. He needs to deal with that attack on his pawn. He also needs to get his king out of the centre of the board. White's king there, we see in the middle, is never going to be safe in the middle. He has to get it there to the right-hand side. He has to castle that king sooner or later. The pressure's on Magnus, both on the board and the clock. I think this opening's been a bit of a disaster for him. He needs to find accurate moves to kind of put the ball back into Pomniachi's court here.
And Magnus is thinking, and we had some dramatic minutes there where we were wondering what was happening, and Magnus had a reaction. Let's look at that reaction. He was really angry, and we're not. Wow.
Yeah,
something really upset him, and we're not quite sure what it is. We will definitely try to get an interview after all the games they have finished and ask him about that. Okay, we do have some moves.
That's right. So White has actually sacrificed a pawn. We see that one of White's pawns there on the left side has disappeared from the board. Black's queen is gone on an adventure. She's being greedy. She's grabbed a pawn there. And we see that Black, actually, those pawns on the left side, Black's pawns at the top of the board, they are unrivaled, they are unmatched. Those pawns later will be a huge factor trying to rush down the board. In the meantime, White is gambling everything on those central pawns. White has just pushed a pawn in the centre there, attacking the black knight. Nice sacrifice there from Magnus. I personally quite like it, but Black is now a pawn ahead. Napomniachi, an extra pawn and an extra 5 minutes on the clock. This is the game for him. He needs to fight. He needs to come back in this game. Otherwise, he might not get another chance.
And so far, we are still in territory well known. So the players have played this position before, so...
And they keep playing fast. All right, to everyone at home who's just mesmerised by how fast these players are able to play the moves in the openings, I actually asked one of the grandmasters about that one time, and I was told that it is kind of like, for me, when I'm memorising, for example, the road from my childhood home to my school, I could easily walk that entire road without thinking. My feet would just walk the whole way. I'd done it 1,000 times. And the grandmaster I talked to said, it's kind of like that with the openings. Done it so many times, so, you know, the moves are just so easy to find.
Yes. Yeah. There are some lines where it is completely like that. You've played them so many times. You've been through it on the computer, on a board, hundreds and hundreds of times that it does like this. And it sounds impressive just to kind of do 20 moves like that. but it is very much like you've played it. The hand knows what it wants to do. There are other kind of situations which are so unusual that 5 moves in, you're like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening here. But chess is like that. There's the differences and there's the road well travelled.
That's right. It's all about muscle memory in a way. Sometimes you played those exact moves on the board with your hand, so you can kind of close your eyes. You know exactly what to do next. And it's the same for these players. Actually, most of them, they spend 90% of their time studying chess on a computer. So they've done those clicks before. They've made those maneuvers before. Like their hand kind of carries them through. I think that's the case for Napomniachi here, who's had this position before, but Magnus Carlsen, maybe less familiar. He doesn't have that muscle memory in this exact position. That's why he's spent so much time on the clock.
And I can also let you in a secret that even the really top grandmasters, they are working on their memory all the time. It's not like they look at it once and that's it. They know everything there is to know. No. They are there with their teams going through every single line. And there's the coach going, no, you got it wrong. Do it again. And that's exactly how they're memorizing. And I think I was told that it took someone 3 months to fully memorize one opening.
Yeah, nothing comes easy in life. It's all about hard work.
And they are making some moves. Is there interesting stuff happening on the board, David?
That's right. So maybe if we bring up the analysis board, we can explain Magnus Carlsen's last move especially. Surprises me a bit. We see that White's bishop has just moved... White's bishop has just moved up the board two squares. He wants to support his central pawn. So White, his whole idea is to push in the centre. Meanwhile, we see it's a race. Normally we see pawn races in the endgame, but here we see a race already. It's getting exciting. Black is pushing.
And look at the bar.
The bar is zooming up in Black's direction. This pawn on the left side, it's already only 3 squares from making a new queen. Meanwhile, White is pushing in the centre. White pawn is also 3 squares from making a new queen. It's a race. Which pawn is stronger on the left, the pawn on the left flank, or the pawn in the centre? Black retreats his queen out of the way of this pawn. This pawn is nearly running home already. White just pushes his queen forward. It's a race.
And it's moved one step further. So this is such an intriguing battle, because one of the great things about having a pawn like that on the edge of the board is that it will decoy a lot of White's pieces, and I just really like what Magnus is doing. He's just calmly centralising his rooks and attacking the queen. And Magnus is going to try to use all his pieces to support the advance of his pawn in the centre.
That's right. And, I mean, this is very cool, very calm from Magnus. I would be panicking, personally, if one of my opponent's pawns down the flank was so far down the board already, so close to making a new queen.
Oh, as you can see, the queen is now supporting that pawn. So that pawn is really ready to march 1 square forward and then make a queen. So Magnus has to tread carefully.
All right, and we see Stockfish coming up here, David. That means the computer's move suggestions. And are these good, the suggestions by the computer?
That's right. So Stockfish is one of the strongest computers out there, just one of the strongest chess-playing entities in existence right now. And it recommends 3 moves for White. All of those 3 moves, though, actually White's best moves, they all give Black an advantage. We see there the evaluation next to it. It says -1.0, -1.1. Actually, Napomniachi, he's leaving the room. I'm not sure he's allowed to do that.
No, you're not
he's
allowed
not
to do
allowed to do that. What is happening now? Jan Napomniachi has left the room. Regulations clearly state he is not allowed to leave the room.
Wow, that's controversial because, I mean, I'm sure he's not doing it. I'm sure maybe he just needs the bathroom, maybe he needs to cough, but...
You're not allowed.
You're not allowed because
unless there's been some specific dialogue with an arbiter, then you're not allowed.
Because some players, they do have the opportunity to go and check a computer. For example, he could be checking what Stockfish says, and that for these players, that's a huge advantage. That's why we have those rules in place. But
because obviously the arbiters, the referees in the chess game cannot control the entire apartment of Jan Napomniachi. Okay, I'm very excited to hear what they will do with this. He is not allowed to leave the room.
That's right. Unless he has a camera in the other room just to show that he is, I mean, that there's no funny
simply going to the toilet, yes. Okay, we will definitely check out what's going on with that and if he was allowed to do what he did, leaving the room. It is Magnus Carlsen in the move.
That's right. And Magnus Carlsen, we saw with the Stockfish evaluation, Magnus Carlsen is in trouble. Even his best moves give Black a 1-point advantage, a 1-pawn advantage. if we count the material on the board as well, black is also a pawn up, and that's not just any pawn. It's a very dangerous pawn there on the left flank, 2 squares away from promotion.
That is very dangerous. And you can imagine if his little buddy there comes and joins in the play, my goodness me, it's going to be game over. But wow, we've got some controversy going on.
Yes, and I actually have got notice back from the technical people from Chess24 that make sure everything is running okay. And the reason Magnus Carlsen was so angry was that he did actually have some technical issue. He closed the browser when he opened it up or logged in again. It didn't go back to the position he left. But it was all sorted out, so he is apparently happy now. But then we know why he had that rage against the computer at some point during this game. We do not know what was happening with Napomniachi leaving the room and if he was allowed to do so. So we'll check up on that as well. It is Magnus Carlsen thinking in a position where he is looking a little bit worse.
Yeah, he's looking worse on the board, and also maybe affected by that disconnection earlier, those internet issues. His time situation, he has only 4 minutes in a bad position. There we see he shuffled his rook across to the corner. His rook has come back from where it came from. His rook started on that square, but it has to stop the black pawn. He's targeting that pawn right now. That black pawn is defended by the black queen and the black rook behind it. So white's rook is very much doing a passive job. It's very defensive right now. I think Jovanka's right. Sooner or later, we will see another black pawn start to race down the board. Yeah, first, he develops a bishop.
Yeah, that's very nicely done. The bishop comes in to help the game. Yeah,
it's looking very good for black. The problem for white is that there's just nothing to do. Your pawns in the centre of the board, they look very nice, but as soon as you start advancing them, they'll probably become a weakness. Also, if we bring up the analysis board, we can see, for example, white wants to push these pawns, but if you push them, black will just capture, and now you cannot use your own pawn to recapture. Suddenly, you open up the opponent's pieces. This bishop will capture a rook. This rook is worth much more than the bishop right now. It's just hard to find a plan for Magnus Carlsen. How do you improve your pieces? How do you deal with this pawn? How do you deal with, you mentioned his buddy, the B pawn here on the B line. How do you deal with these 2 pawns together? Black in complete control here.
And I will just, because there is a lot of drama going on in this game right now, and we do know that Napomniachi left the room. I will read from the regulations now that players are not allowed to leave their desk and camera while in a game of theirs is in progress, and they do not have the permission from the arbiter. This includes bathroom breaks. There will be regular breaks in between. We know that they have 15 minutes. It states very clearly they are not allowed to leave in case of emergency. It's the only time they are allowed to leave. So we will try to get clarification. The only reason he would be allowed to if he had agreed with the arbiter that he was allowed to.
Right. I think Magnus Carlsen, he's not the kind who would complain about that. He wouldn't launch an appeal. It must have come down to the arbiter's decision. Once I was playing a game and the doorbell rang and I was told by the arbiter everyone could hear me. So I had to go and answer it, but I was penalised. I had to lose time on my clock as a punishment for that. So I don't think there'll be any issues here. Hopefully, I'm sure Napomniachi wasn't doing anything dodgy.
I'm sure he wasn't doing anything dodgy, but those are the rules.
Exactly.
And you have to respect them. And I'm sure... I mean, hopefully he's communicated to the arbiter that he needed to leave for whatever reason, and the arbiter gave him the go-ahead and everything is okay. But rules are rules. I mean, there was a fantastic case of an American player whose bathroom was leaking. He was playing chess, and he couldn't leave the room either because he would be penalised. And so he had to message his father and say, hey, can you sort this out? And, yeah.
Well, rules must be rules, because obviously if a chess player leaves the room, then he could potentially check the computers. That is what the world of 2020 is like. Computers are everywhere. It is easy to check. So that is why the regulations are so strict, even if absolutely we do not think any of the players are cheating.
Yeah, and this is actually why we have these webcams in play, so that we can see the players and we can make sure that nothing untoward. And also, as Justine Banksy points out, we can enjoy them. She says, I love the webcams, best part of 2020 chess. So
yeah, that's right. And also the referees, the arbiters, they have other webcams, they have cameras giving a whole view of that room just to make sure there's nobody else there, just to make sure there's no other technology in reach of the players. And yeah, personally, I agree. It's so interesting seeing their facial expressions up close. Normally, even at these big tournaments, sometimes I'll be in the same tournament as Magnus Carlsen, but I can't see his face because he's so far away. He'll be playing on the stage. It's hard to tell the reactions. So this is a dream, this online chess. That being said, Magnus Carlsen in big trouble in this game. Black, I think, has, Napomniachi, huge time advantage and many strong moves in this position. We mentioned that other pawn, the buddy, running down the board. I think that pawn, there we see, it's at home now, it's on the B line. It is going to start running. Okay, it doesn't yet. Napomniachi tries to trade a pair of rooks. Less keen on that one, but I think Napomniachi is still in complete control.
And apparently he was allowed to leave the room. He had gotten permission from the arbiter, so he is not in any way cheating or not in any way disqualified.
Excellent.
Yes, good news.
Excellent
good
news, because we really don't want to be losing a game like that.
Exactly. So, all right, well, there has been so much drama in this game, both chess-wise and other things happening. But now they are playing, and Jan Pomnyachien, what's happening?
That's right, and Black is offering a trade of queens right now. I think, Jovanka, you didn't like that last move by White, retreating a bishop to the back line. You don't want to retreat unless there's a clear reason. Magnus Carlsen attacking his opponent's queen. We see Magnus there just gesturing against the camera. He's so frustrated right now. Everything's turned against him in this game. His internet connection, the position, the clock. We see the queens have left the board. Black is still a pawn ahead, though, and it's an important pawn. It's that pawn on the left flank, that huge, really advanced pawn there for Black. That is going to decide the game.
Yeah.
White forced to retreat another bishop. Black's rook now lines itself up with those two bishops, those two white bishops under fire from the black rook. Black's in complete control. We see that by the bar as well. A 4-point advantage here for Black.
And if it is internet problems for Magnus Carlsen, what are the rules if he is disconnected?
So he has 30 seconds to connect back on, and if he manages to connect, then he will simply lose the time that it took for him to connect up. And if he had less, say for instance, he had 10 seconds left on the clock and it took him 20 seconds, then he's just lost on time automatically. But if he's disconnected, say in the middle of the game, and it's taken him 5 minutes to reconnect, then the timer stops after 30 seconds and the game pauses, and it will re-continue when he manages to connect.
All right. Well, now it is Jan Pomniachi's clock that is running. Is he completely winning this position right now?
That's right. If we bring up the board, we can see Black has two very strong moves here. There is a pawn not protected in the centre of the board. Black could just zoom up and capture this pawn. It looks like he's leaving his pawn here, this very advanced, this powerful pawn, unprotected. But the problem is White's rook cannot move. It is tied down to this bishop. OK, instead, Napomniachi goes for a different move, a one that I also like, but maybe not quite as much as just if you have a free pawn that you can take and there's no repercussions, there's no consequences, I would just take that off the board. Instead, Napomniachi hitting, trying to break things open in the centre. If White takes this pawn on offer, suddenly Black's bishop will join the game.
And that would be deadly. If that bishop came in and started looking at that rook, oh, goodness me, that would be the end of the game.
That's right. So it makes sense what Napomniachi is doing. He's just slowly undermining White's central pawn mass. He's undermining it from the side now. Strong move. Look at White's bishops just tied down. These bishops, they're such sad pieces. They're both very vulnerable now. White's rook's passively placed, just tied up, guarding this black pawn. White's bishop's passively placed. Everything's gone wrong for Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, absolutely everything. And it's even difficult to find a move because I'm sitting here racking my brains because you've got to find moves that are tricky as well. And Magnus Carlsen has found the best move, I think, just to advance his bishop and attack that all-important, dangerous pawn on the left-hand side of the board.
That's right, and there we see his Stockfish evaluations just above the board there on the top right-hand side. It does say that Black has two great moves here. Black could capture a pawn with his rook. I mentioned that a moment ago. That pawn is still unprotected in the middle of the board. As Black, I would just take that pawn off the board, make sure that it doesn't come back to bite me later, that very far advanced pawn. I would capture that with my rook. Black could also, that last pawn push he made on the right side of the board, he could also capture a pawn there. So two different pawn captures, both extremely good. But if he doesn't find either of those two moves, his advantage will mostly disappear.
And you can just see on Magnus Carlsen's face, he is not too comfortable. He is leading by 1 point in the first day semi-final match against Napomniachi, and Napomniachi is now very close to equaling the score, and they will, if that happens, they will play a fourth game today. It all comes down to that one.
That's right, and he's doing the right thing here. He's slowed down slightly. He's taking a pause. He knows he's still got a 4-minute advantage. This is the critical moment. As long as he captures one of the pawns, Magnus Carlsen's defences are going to be broken. White is just running out of resources. All of his pawns. Okay, we see a pawn has left the board,
and he's running out of time as well.
He is running out of time, and the position is not looking so hot. Okay, so Magnus has moved his bishop to attack the rook, and the rook has moved to counter-attack the bishop that White has on the dark squares.
That's right. So the black rook there attacking White's dark squared bishop. We could see a trade of bishops here. This last move, very clever from Napomniachi. It looked like he was about to drop some points here, drop some material. Instead, his rook just steps back, counter-attack. Now two bishops are looking at each other as well. We've seen Magnus Carlsen capture this pawn, but I think Black can just simply trade bishops on this square and then capture a pawn with his other bishop. Black's bishop's in complete control. Black is also going to be a couple of pawns ahead. Magnus trying to stay in this game, just trying to survive as long as possible. We saw him save a losing position in the last game, but if Napomniachi's careful, if he's accurate, he's still winning.
Is this easier for Napomniachi to just get into that win, or is it the same as last time? Quite difficult. He has to play very accurately.
He still has to play accurately because there are a lot of pieces on the board, but because there are a lot more pawns on the board, then it is easier. The margin for a draw becomes lower and lower for Magnus Carlsen. I would definitely say Napomniachi has extremely good chances of winning this.
No, completely agreed. He's going to be 2 pawns ahead. I think now is the important moment. He needs to... OK, he finds it. He captures a pawn in the centre with his bishop. White finally removes that far advanced pawn on the left flank there. But if we count the material left, Black is 2 pawns ahead. 2 pawns in the endgame is normally a decisive advantage. 1 pawn, sometimes you can hold that pawn, you can blockade that pawn. But Black has an extra pawn on both the right-hand side and the left side. Black now just bringing his king into the position. His advantage dropping slightly there. I think he had a stronger move, but Black is still in charge.
All right, well, the moves are coming out very fast now, and Magnus Carlsen is trying his best to save this. Is draw the only thing he can hope for now?
That's right.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, Magnus, he just doesn't have enough pieces left to ever win this one unless the Pomnyachien mouse slips, unless he just suffers a complete disaster. But he still has drawing chances if Napomniachi can't get one of those 2 extra pawns to the end of the board.
Yeah, and I really do like his last practical decision where he's retreated his bishop 1 square in order to offer a trade of bishops. And I think this is his best chance because with those bishops gone, we get into a rook and pawn ending, and perhaps that pawn on the right-hand side of the board, the one that is closest to the white king, that's a little bit weak because it's not only doubled, but it's unprotected. So Black will have to do a lot of jiggery-pokery to try to defend both those pawns.
That's right. So Jovanka wants to exchange these bishops, and then the white king will target this black pawn, pawn which can't be protected by a fellow pawn. These pawns are actually doubled. They're on the same line. So very good defensive try there by Magnus Carlsen. The problem is going to be this pawn. This pawn is unopposed right now. Napomniachi needs to bank on that pawn becoming a queen later on. That's going to be his winning idea. Yeah, I think the clock situation as well, Napomniachi just has to be careful he doesn't get very low on the clock because, as we saw in the last game, that's what cost him.
And he has gone under 5 and even 4 minutes on the clock, Napomniachi. You have said that is when the clocks start ringing and it starts to get very tense. Napomniachi is thinking about his next move. It is a pawn move.
And he has marched that pawn forward on the left-hand side of the board. It is going to inch ever closer to making itself a queen. The bishops have come off, and I do expect White to start getting, I think perhaps
I think white needs to make sure that his rook is on a more active square. At the moment, it's not great. He needs to keep an eye on that black pawn on the left side there. And normally, rooks, they belong behind pawns, especially passed pawns which have no rival. White should put his rook behind that pawn now. So he should zoom his rook up to the top and then shift it across to keep an eye on that black pawn on the left-hand side. For example, in this position, personally, I would be moving my rook up to either this square or this one, and then I would drop my rook behind this pawn. That's the best way to keep it. OK, we see Stockfish above the board agrees. I think this is the best way to stop black's pawn. If you leave it one move, if you move your... OK, he puts his rook in front instead. His rook is passively placed in front. And we see the engine. Stockfish doesn't like that move at all. That might be the losing mistake from Magnus Carlsen. His final chance was to put his rook behind instead of in front of the pawn.
No way. That I didn't approve of that. I was thinking exactly along the same lines as you, David. The rook behind the pawn, and now it's in front because it's passive. Because if you're ever going to save an endgame like this, when you're material down, it's by having a really good rook. And if your rook is is in front of that pawn, well, it's not very good. It's not very active, and this is worrying.
That's right, and there was a trap in that position. Magnus Carlsen couldn't have taken that pawn with his rook, because if the rooks get traded off the board, black will win. Black will win this game. So Magnus Carlsen, he has to retreat with his king, but once you start retreating, it's never going to go well. Black can slowly improve his pieces. Eventually, black will bring his king over to the left side and use his king to help shepherd that pawn, black's remaining pawn on the left there, shepherd that pawn forward. But at the moment, it's just looking like Magnus Carlsen, he just has to sit tight and hope that Napomniachi doesn't find a winning plan.
Yeah, and I will mention that Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura have had another draw in their third game. So Wesley So is leading 2-1. That means Hikaru Nakamura must win the last game if he wants to win the first semi-final match against Wesley So, or else if they draw it or Wesley So wins, then he will be the winner of day one. So we're going to follow all the drama there as well, but we have to finish off this game, and it is looking like Magnus Carlsen will lose this game, and that means that they will equal the score, and it's all down to that last game.
Absolutely, Kaya. That's what I think as well. I really love what Napomniachi is doing. He is going to be using teamwork. I mean, David said it earlier on, teamwork makes the dream work, and that is that is so super important in an endgame. So I fully expect to see that king, the black king, start marching its way to the left-hand side of the board.
That's right. Black has only actually one winning plan here, because on the right side, black has a 3 versus 2 pawn advantage, but it's very hard to get one of those pawns down to the end of the board. They're always blocked by white's pawns. On the other side, though, on the left flank, black does have one unopposed pawn, and it just needs the king to support it. So if we bring the board up, Napomniachi here, he's thinking how best to do this, but he needs to bring his king round to support this pawn. Once his king joins the action, this pawn is going to race down the board. Black's king is just needed. It needs to shuffle across to get rid of the blockade of this white rook. Once that happens, black should win.
Can the clock destroy this plan for him, though? He has to find this. He has to find these moves within 2.5 minutes.
Yes, the problem with the clock is that it's constantly ticking, and you don't have time to accurately count. And what you needed to do, black needs to do, is assess. Okay, if I move my king over to the left-hand side of the board, and if I lose one pawn, am I going to be in time? And this is the problem. Okay, so actually we've seen that happen. Okay, Pomnyachien has made a run for it with the king, and that king is going to be headed towards the left-hand side of the board to assist that pawn in promoting.
That's right, Napomniachi. I think he took a while. He let his clock drop down a bit, but he has stumbled across the right plan, the correct plan. And I think he's going to execute that plan. It's very hard for white to stop that. White needs to create a distraction. White needs to win some pawns now on the right side. White needs his own pawns to start running up the board, but white's pawns are still at home. They haven't really started the race. Black is always going to be ahead in a pawn race. And Magnus Carlsen there, he's fidgeting. He knows his time is ticking, and he needs to come up with some tricks. He needs to distract Napomniachi, needs to make Napomniachi panic. But it's looking ever more likely that black is going to take this point.
Yeah, and the great thing is that white still cannot capture the pawn on the right-hand side with a rook because of the move rook opposites. The rooks can then face each other, so I think...
That's right. If we bring up the board, we can see there's a trap in the position as well. As Jovanka mentioned, it looks like White can capture a pawn, but this would be a losing move. White would have to resign or give up immediately. If White captured this pawn with his rook, Black could finish the game immediately by trading off the rooks. This rook is now pinned, we would say. White's rook cannot move because the king is behind it. The rooks would have to leave the board. And once the rooks leave the board, Black is a pawn ahead. When you're a pawn ahead in king and pawn endgames, you are winning. This pawn is just going to run home or distract the White king. Also, if White had captured the pawn with his king, the same thing would happen. Black would drop the rook down and the rooks would trade, be exchanged, leaving the board, and Black would win. Therefore, Magnus Carlsen doesn't take that pawn. He doesn't fall into the trap. He gives a check. Napomniachi tries to trade rooks, but we see that Magnus, he just has to keep the rooks. He has to hope for the best now. I think he just has to pray. Napomniachi defending his pawn with his rook there. Yeah, 2 extra pawns in rook end games is normally enough to win.
And Magnus retreating with his rook. Okay, are we going to see Napomniachi's king start to help its pawn on the left-hand side of the board?
I think Napomniachi, he just needs to bring his king left. He's not rushing yet. He's just advancing his pawns on the right side. I think there was no reason not to bring his king to the left side right now. That being said, he's not rushing. That's a good thing.
That is a good thing, because there's a little motto where it says, hurry. No, it's a rush. No, hurry, don't rush.
Hurry, don't rush.
Yes.
Harry the H-pawn?
Hurry, no, hurry. Hurry, but don't rush. Because if you rush, you can spoil things.
Yeah, and Magnus also has a lot less time now. He's got 1 minute against 2 minutes.
And Jan Pomnyachien also going under 2 minutes right there. I mean, this game has been so interesting. We had it all. We had it all. Oh, and look at Stockfish.
That's right. So this might be a critical moment. Black actually only has 1 move to maintain the advantage. Well, to maintain a winning advantage. He doesn't find it. He doesn't play the best move there.
I'm not liking this move at all.
And Stockfish doesn't like that move. Magnus Carlsen was frowning as well. But Magnus Carlsen maybe not finding the best reply, giving the advantage back to Black. We saw that White's rook is shuffling across 1 square. He's trying to jump up the board and give check with his rook. He wants to attack the Black king. But I think he had a safer option. He could have just kept that pawn blockaded. Black's pawn's on the right side now. He's advanced them. They look good, but they're actually weak. So I think Napomniachi's last few moves, the plan wasn't great. He should have rushed his king over to the left side. Napomniachi was winning.
Yes.
Still probably winning, but he needs to be ever more careful now. He's letting it slip a bit.
Yeah, no, I really agree with you, David. I think something has gone a little bit wrong with Napomniachi's position, because that pawn that advanced on the right-hand side of the board, that's weak. If the White king goes back on itself and snaffles it off, suddenly it's White who also has a passed pawn in the equation. Oh, OK, so Black has centralised the rook.
Magnus now under 1 minute on the clock.
Yeah, and we know when a player goes under 1 minute, that means the likelihood of panic is going to increase.
Yeah, that's right. And Napomniachi, OK, actually, Magnus Carlsen pushes his rook all the way up the board. I was going to say Napomniachi looking calm, just taking a sip of water there. Finally, Magnus Carlsen, we talked about rooks needing to be behind pawns. Magnus, he could have done that about 20 moves ago. Instead, he finally corrects his mistake. He's trying to push his rook behind the Black king, behind Black's pawns. But maybe it's too late. Now Black is the one pushing his rook forward to attack White's pawns. Ooh, we're going to see Magnus Carlsen try to eliminate Black's pawn there on the left flank. I think that's a very good move by Magnus Carlsen.
The computer says it's a great move. Jan Napomniachi is also under the minute on the clock.
That's right, Napomniachi, he's letting this one slip. We said he was so in control for so long, but again, he's used to having loads of time on his clock. Now he's dropped under a minute. I think the pressure's getting to him. We saw he raised his eyebrows. He's going after White's pawns on the right side, but he's forgetting that his most important pawn is that pawn on the left there, that pawn on the B line. Once that pawn disappears...
Oh, the computer hates that move. The bar says now it's a draw. What's happening?
Oh, look at that. And look at that. Magnus doesn't even capture the pawn. Instead, he gives a little check to drive the king backwards. Oh, and I think Napomniachi's blown it.
He has blown it. This position, Napomniachi, he will still win one of White's pawns there, White's remaining pawn. Napomniachi probably will win that one, but this position is actually a well-known draw. Black will be 2 pawns ahead, but those 2 pawns, they're not connected. They're not connected to each other. They're separated. This one, it is a draw, but White needs to know what he's doing.
All right, and Magnus is now thinking, and he makes his move. Is he doing the right move here?
That's right. He's going behind with his rook now to try and check that Black King. Finally, Magnus Carlsen, he's got a position that he will have studied before. I can guarantee Magnus Carlsen studied this exact endgame before, with Black having 2 extra pawns, but separated pawns. Basically, all he needs to do is make sure those pawns don't advance together. White is just going to keep checking the Black King from the side, from behind.
And they're very dangerous when those pawns are far advanced up the board. But at the minute, one of them is quite far back, and the second pawn that is in White's half of the board is very well guarded by the king. And I think Magnus has this completely under control. Unbelievable stuff, to be honest.
I've said it before today, and it's just not Jan Nepomniachtchi's day.
Yeah, that's right. Like,
it's looking that way.
Everything was in his favour as well. Magnus got disconnected. Magnus was flustered. He couldn't focus. He was just angry with the position. Bad situation on the clock, bad situation on the board.
2 pawns down with a very straightforward plan. I find this quite shocking.
That's right. Napomniachi, he just forgot that his pride and joy was this pawn on the left flank, and he just let it be traded off. He's left himself with 2 pawns, but White's king will easily deal with those pawns. Yeah, this is very, very surprising stuff. Napomniachi, he will be able to advance another pawn here. We see him push a pawn. The problem is now there's just no way of making progress. He has to give up 1 pawn to get the other one running. But 1 pawn in a rook endgame is not enough. Here, Black's rook is paralysed, trapped in the corner, defending his own pawn.
Yeah.
Rook is passive. This position will end up in a dead-drawn endgame. Black can't get one of those pawns down to the end. It's close, but not close enough.
And Pomnyachien is thinking, is there anything else he can do here? Is this
he cannot keep that pawn that the king watches so closely. I mean, because the rook is so passive. The rook needs to mobilise itself. But okay, the rook has mobilised in this case, and Magnus will take off that pawn. And now, okay, so we are going to see a lovely technique by Magnus Carlsen. So I suspect that his rook will now get behind the pawn.
Look at Napomniachi. He looks so sad. Like, it's just...
Yeah, he's had 2 excellent shots, and he hasn't been able to put the ball in the net.
That's right, twice in a row. And we see Magnus Carlsen just repeating the position there. He's going to use his rook to start checking the Black King sooner or later. This is a very well-known draw. Black only has 1 pawn left, and that pawn will not be allowed to advance the whole way. White's just going to keep giving checks. Sometimes he can even offer to trade rooks White now, because 1 pawn on its own isn't enough.
So Napomniachi is trying hard by advancing this king, but notice how Magnus Carlsen is using his king and his rook to stop that pawn advancing. Remember, in endgames, it is David Howell's favourite expression, teamwork makes the dream work, and you have to remember that.
That's right, and both White's rook and king covering the same square, covering the pawn advance. Napomniachi there just shuffling his rook across. That move actually doesn't do anything. It's a waiting move.
And now the white rook has come to gobble up the white pawn, and we are going to see, I think the players agree, a very quick draw.
That's right. Napomniachi, you can tell on his face. He knows it's over. He's laughing to himself. He's missed another opportunity. 2nd game in a row. He had it in the bag. Just nerves, the clock, everything just made him...
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I think he was trying to maximise his position. He knew the plan, but he just wanted to improve absolutely everything before the king made his dash to the left-hand side of the board. And I think that was basically his failing. He pushed too hard.
Yeah, I said it in the match against Anish Giri. Magnus, don't get him in the endgame. He knows all the tricks. He's a magician. He will escape somehow by hook or by crook. And another piece of escapism, an escape act there from Magnus Carlsen. Impressive defence.
And how is Jan Nepomniachtchi feeling now? Another game he is winning, and then just not able to get it the ball in the net, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably, yes, I can even verbalize by saying, man, come on, give me a break. No, I mean, he knows.
Devastated.
He
really.
knows there were 2 points there up for grabs, and he didn't do it. He bottled it.
You feeling sorry for him, David?
Yeah, I've been there myself. When you're dominating the whole game, it's like Jovanka said, sometimes you control the game, you get all the chances, you get so many shots, you just can't get that ball in the net. I've been there, especially against these top players in the world. Sometimes you can outmaneuver them, you can outplay them in the early stages. Sometimes you can even control the middle of the game. But in the end game, they always have tricks. They always make you work for it. You have to win the game 100 times just to get 1 point. It's so difficult. And Napomniachi, 2 games in a row now.
Yeah, no, 2 games where I would say he was the victim of himself. You know, he was the one who took the bad decisions, and he will be kicking himself so much.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 more game left to play.
Yeah.
He can still pull it back. He's been so close. Perhaps third time lucky.
All right, well, let's look at the standings. Both semifinals are done with 3 games. So it is Magnus Carlsen with 2 points against Jan Pomnyachie's 1 point. And that means that if Magnus Carlsen is able to draw this last game, he will be the winner of day 1. If Jan Pomnyachie wins it, then they will have a draw in their first semifinal match and is all to play for tomorrow. So for Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So, we know Wesley So won that second game, and he is, like Magnus Carlsen, up by 1 point against Hikaru Nakamura. That means Hikaru Nakamura needs to win that last game that will start very soon. If Wesley So is able to draw that game or win it, he will be the winner of day 1. So much drama going into the very last round of the first days of semifinals. And David, this game for this last game, it had it all. We said it so many times. Magnus Carlsen and Jan Napomniachi, there was disconnection problems. Just it didn't go the way for either player, but it was Jan Napomniachi pushing for the win. Where did it go wrong for him?
That's right. So
we were always certain he was winning this game.
That's right. He was so close so many times, even towards the end. I mean, earlier he had, countless chances to put the ball in the back of the net to finish this one off. But I think the critical moment came down very near the end. He started pushing a pawn on the right side of the board. He didn't need to worry about that. You shouldn't push pawns unless... they can't go backwards. You shouldn't push pawns unless you're sure it's for the right reason. And he just created his own weaknesses. He pushed a pawn here when the plan should have been simple. We mentioned this, Jovanka mentioned this. Just walk your king over. Use your king to push this pawn forward, to guide it home. King, pawn and rook together. This pawn is destined to become a queen. White would have to give up his rook for that pawn eventually. Black would remain a rook up. Black would win this game. Instead, he overcomplicated things. He gave himself these weaknesses. He pushed his pawn down the board, and suddenly this pawn is a weakness. I think the final mistake, though, was trying to go after White's pawns on the right-hand side. Again, it's not too late. This pawn is still your strength. He let that pawn disappear. He went after the wrong pawns. He went after the wrong plan. And in this final position, we see that, unfortunately, just a few moves later, these 2 pawns on their own, they are not connected. They don't protect each other, and it's just not enough to win. Magnus Carlsen showing his endgame quality, showing he's done his research in endgames before his study, and easily drawing this game. Missed opportunity. And
look at Jan Napomniachi as he realizes he blundered a winning position again. Oh.
And the great thing is that we've got it on repeat.
Yes. Oh, he is just so unhappy with himself not being able to just get that ball in the net for the second game in a row. And now they have 15 minutes before that final game. Magnus Carlsen only needs a draw. Jan Napomniachi needs a win. What is he going to do in that game?
Well, this is the question. So he has to reset desperately because he will be fuming. But OK, emotion is too much in this game. He really needs to just get there and just play a game of chess. Anything.
All right. Well, we actually did see in this last game, Magnus Carlsen had some internet connection problems. And, well, super hard question. We asked the chess players again. What would they rather have? Really, really bad internet or really bad relationships? Oh.
Heartbreaking, but okay, then you take bad internet, what you gotta do? I need a good internet.
I actually would be very happy to not use internet ever again for the rest of my life. You lose a lot of time, you lose your mind, you stop thinking.
Yeah, living without internet is difficult but possible.
Oh no, internet is very important.
Okay, bad internet. I hope that we will return to open the board chess soon.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer the bad relationship with the good internet, to be fair.
Oh, bad internet because I already have it.
Already bad internet in India for Vidit. Jovanka, what would you choose?
Bad internet.
Oh, okay. Well, we know your husband is watching. David, how about you?
My internet's pretty bad. My love life's pretty bad as well. So, I take either at this point.
All right. We actually also have Simon Williams joining us, Ginger GM. And I'll ask you too, Simon, what would you rather have? Really, really bad internet or really bad relationships?
Oh, that's such a nice, easy question to start me off with, right? I'm going to have to say bad internet, right? So, yeah, we'll start easy.
All right.
Been loving your show today, by the way. It's been fascinating day of chess.
Thank you so much, Simon. And we will also mention to all the viewers that Simon is doing his own stream, Ginger GM stream on Twitch, going maybe more in-depth into these games and analysis, Simon.
Yeah, that's right. I'm streaming live every day on Twitch, and we're going into details. We're having a look at the other games as well. Very interesting. So there's so much chess now out there. It's a very exciting time for us chess players and lovers of the game. So, yeah.
And what is your favorite move of the day? And maybe also David can be really quick on his computer and find that move.
Well, I have to say, one of my favourite ideas, I think it was, occurred in the other game between Wesley So and the H-bomb, Hikaru Nakamura. And it was, I think it was in game 2. And we can bring this up. It's on the 37th move. And Wesley won this game. So he had the white pieces. And he came up with a nice little concept to bring all of his pieces into the battle. I've heard David talking about how it's teamwork. And you can see this position here with the black king looking very naked. It's really embarrassing himself. And he's put some clothes on, that king. It's getting very breezy over there. But at the moment, there's no obvious way to checkmate the king. The knight and the queen are kind of hovering around it, ready to sting it like a bee. But you need to bring in some reinforcements. And this is where White played a lovely little idea. He went rook e2. And this is what I call the rook swinger, one of my favorite maneuvers. And then this rook came up the board and it swung itself around to attack the black king. And when that third piece entered the attack, there was nothing that Hikaru could do to defend. So this was a really nice maneuver, just bringing in all the pieces to the attack. So, yeah, great stuff.
Great stuff. And we know that Wesley So is in the lead in that matchup against Hikaru Nakamura. They just started playing their final day of game of today. Who's your favorite to win day one now, Simon? We know that Hikaru Nakamura can be fierce in comebacks.
Yeah, I mean, Hikaru is probably one of the guys who you could bet on to always come back. He's got such a strong mentality about him. But Wesley So is a very calm player, and Hikaru is going to have to do something particularly special to bounce back today. It's possible he can do that, but I'm still going to go for Wesley So in that game.
And what do you think about Magnus Carlsen and Napomniachi? We're just feeling so sorry for Napomniachi. It's just not his day here.
I mean, chess is like a cruel mistress. It's really quite harsh at times. And I think like Magnus Carlsen, I mean, he's such an escape artist. I mean, you put him in Alcatraz, he'd be out within 24 hours, you know. He would just find a way to get out of trouble. He really is. He's so amazing, especially in the ending. So Nepo's had lots of chances. He hasn't quite used them. There's only one game to go, and it seems like luck is on Magnus's side. So, again, I'm going to go Magnus with that one.
Do you agree with him, David?
Yes, I think Napomniachi, he's had more chances than most people get against Magnus in a lifetime, and he just hasn't managed to finish them off, and I'm not sure he'll get another one.
What do you think, Jovanka?
I totally agree with the guys. I think Napomniachi is in big trouble.
All right, Napomniachi, and we see his reaction again. What do you think of that, Simon? That just disbelief.
I really love watching Nepo Jan. I just think he's such a great character. You can, he doesn't hide his emotions. You can blatantly see it on his face. And it was the same with Magnus in that game. They were both showing so much drama. just with their facial expressions. And you could just watch them. I could just mute it and you could see what's going on in the game. You'd be like, okay, wow, what's going on here? So I really am a fan of both the players and what they give to the game. So, yeah, great stuff.
And we actually saw, I'm noticing, I like all the details, that Jan has brought his white regular cup and a yellow cup, a mug, to the game today. What is your bet? What is in those mugs, Simon?
Bit of vodka in one when it gets a bit dodgy, and maybe a nice cup of tea in the other, possibly. No, of course, these guys don't drink that. I mean, I guess it's just two different kinds of drinks, and he's keeping himself well stocked up. Probably why the toilet gate incident actually happened as well, you know, which I saw. So, yeah.
Yes, we did check with the arbiters, and he was allowed to do that. They had checked that off. And, well, actually, Magnus Carlsen in a podcast earlier this year said that during one of the World Championship matches, or maybe it wasn't World Champion, it was the Rapid or Blitz Championship, he actually got drunk because he was playing so bad. I mean, could that be a solution for Jan Napomniachi here, to just have some vodka and just forget everything?
I think that's something you do after the match. It's quite a risky strategy doing it during the match. It could make very entertaining viewing, though. I mean, I would definitely tune into that, but probably only for us, not for him, to watch that. So yeah, I mean, maybe not encourageable at the moment.
All right. Simon, thank you so much for joining us again, and we will save that beer and that vodka for after today's chess. Good luck with the rest of your streaming today.
Thank you very much, and well done, guys. Good luck, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
See you again tomorrow. Thank you so much, Simon. Yes, so you can watch the Simon Williams Ginger GM stream on Twitch. He is going more in-depth into the analysis. And we are getting ready for that last game of the day for Jan Pomnyachien and Magnus Carlsen. Do you think Jan Pomnyachien can actually shake off everything that happened today and just get into fight mode now?
I think he needs to. He just needs to reset. Whether, as you mentioned, whether taking a swig of alcohol is just that way to completely start afresh, or maybe he'll just be trying to play something a bit different to what he normally does, just to try and get himself in the zone. He needs to just forget. That's the main thing. Forget this is a new game. One chance to come back.
And Magnus, he can just come to the board and play a draw here quite comfortably, but he never does that, does he?
Yeah, but he has a very solid repertoire, so he knows how to make things tight, and he understands Napomniachi very well. And I agree with both you. Napomniachi really needs to refocus and reset. And I'm not sure about the alcohol, because there's a kind of theory that if you get drunk, you can play great attacking chess, not so good everything else. So you
because you get very brave, probably.
Yeah, you get very brave, you get very reckless, but then things get a bit ropey because you can't quite figure out what's the best pawn structure, how am I going to maneuver my pieces. That's too complicated.
Well, but it is actually true. Magnus Carlsen did say that in a podcast earlier this year, that after a horrible day, or during a horrible day of chess during a World Blitz and Chess Championship, he actually did go to his room and took all the vodka he could find in that room, and he played great the rest of the day.
Yeah, I've been there myself. Sometimes it's a great form breaker. If you're in terrible form, you just need something, just anything, to snap yourself out of it, just to pretend that the tournament hasn't started, just to start afresh. And likewise, if you're in good form, then stay away from the alcohol, stay away from anything that can ruin your good mood, that can ruin your great health. And yeah, I think maybe he was saying that tongue-in-cheek, but maybe that might be the trick for Napomniachi.
Well, either way, Twitter is incredibly impressed with Carlsen's ability. We have a tweet from Tarja Svensson who says, Carlsen's ability to save lost positions is unbelievable, just incredible. And I have to take off my hats to Magnus, because that was just, wow, I had written him off.
And we often think about Magnus as this attacking player because he wins many games, but also defensively, he must be great.
Yeah, that's right. He definitely trains every part of his game. He's always had those defensive skills ever since I've known him as when we were extremely young. He's always had those defensive skills. His attacking skills, though, he's improved them so much. His tactics, he calculates, he sees deeper than his opponents. Okay, we see him shaking himself off there.
He knows, it's getting ready.
Yeah, he knows he hasn't been at his best. But
and we see a smile from Jan Napomniachi.
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, maybe, he is ready. I'm not gonna think about what he's been doing in his break. He does have some key in front of him. Very good. He is staying off the alcohol, and they're playing. What's happening?
That's right. So both sides pushing their pawns in front of their kings on the first turn. One of the most classic openings. We go into an opening. It's called the Berlin Wall. And it's called the Berlin Wall because Black's position is so hard to break down. It's so solid. I'm very surprised Napomniachi is even allowing this. He's going for it because the Berlin Wall, Magnus Carlsen, he's one of the leading experts. I think he could draw this position in his sleep. He could hold this position. Napomniachi, though, maybe he knows his chance has passed. He hasn't gone for the most aggressive attempt, but he's hoping beyond hope that somehow Magnus Carlsen maybe relaxes too early. I don't like the opening choice from Napomniachi going into this Berlin Wall. I think he's just going to run up against that wall and fail to break it down. Magnus Carlsen, meanwhile, just advancing his knight there, attacking White's pawn in the centre of the board. This is very traditional stuff. I've actually played this position myself while sitting next to Magnus Carlsen, and he said he liked the way that I played the game, so maybe he'll try and copy some of my ideas from a couple of years ago.
So you had the black pieces.
Yeah, I use this as black. I use this opening when I'm happy to make a draw. With White has a tiny advantage, but it's not enough normally. Lots of pieces get traded early on in the game. This is not the most ambitious start for Napomniachi. I'm very surprised in a must-win situation he's allowing such a solid defence for Magnus Carlsen.
Maybe he's in the kind of realm of let it be, just play a game and see how it pans out, and just abandon any attempt at putting in any effort.
That's right, but this has all been worked out, this position. Okay, Napomniachi very surprised by Magnus Carlsen's last move there. Actually, the last time I had this, apart from that last move, I had this exact position as White. The last time I had it, I was playing against a computer. I was playing against, some of you may have heard it at home, an artificial intelligence program called AlphaZero. You'll have heard of it, Jovanka.
I will have heard of it. I'm seriously impressed. You played AlphaZero, the neural network machine, I think, something.
Didn't AlphaZero learn chess in just minutes or something like this?
Yeah, it learned, within 4 hours, it learned chess by playing against itself, and it was already able to beat Stockfish, and we've mentioned Stockfish as the strongest man-made human computer, and AlphaZero, just by teaching itself, 4 hours later, was able to beat, the strongest chess-playing entity in the world. And I did get a chance. I was part of a team. It was just a bit of an experiment. I got to play against AlphaZero, this artificial intelligence program, and I used this opening as White to make a draw. So with White, you use this opening to try and make a draw. So that's why it shocks me so much that Napomniachi has entered this line. Surprising times.
Yeah, so the position is pretty, I'm thinking in terms of the pawns, it's pretty symmetrical. Both sides have 4 pawns in nearly the same formation as each other, and the pieces are being traded off. That's the more pieces that get traded off, the more worried I get for Napomniachi, because one of the things you do not want is simple positions where your opponent. It's easy for your opponent to make a move. You need to create some choice, you need to create some complexity, and slightly concerned that the position is becoming very simple and it will be easy for Magnus Carlsen to handle.
That's right. If we pull up the analysis board, we can see what Jovanka means. Already, we've seen a pair of knights leave the board, a pair of bishops. The dark squared bishops have both left the board. And now with his last move, Magnus Carlsen offering this queen trade. The queens are looking at each other. Jan Napomniachi says, no queen trades for you. But more important than even the queen trade is the fact that the pawns are completely symmetrical. For example, if Magnus Carlsen pushes his pawn now, look at the... he does this. Look at those pawns. All of Black's pawns exactly... they're exactly copying the White structure. That means there's no chance to open up more lines. There's no way to unbalance things. Just the fact that normally symmetrical pawn structures like this mean the position is completely level. I don't think that Jan Napomniachi will get anywhere near to any winning chances here. White did just attack this knight. This knight was just defended by a pawn. It's also defended by the bishop. So very solid stuff from Magnus Carlsen. I don't think he has anything to complain about here.
So he's basically already accepting that he is losing the day 1 semi-final match and just going all in on day 2.
It's getting close to that stage already.
All right. Well, with white pieces, could he have done this differently? Ivanka?
Yes, I think he could have played a different... He didn't have to allow the Berlin. He could have played it different. He could have certainly challenged Magnus a little bit more and certainly not gotten a position where the pawn structure is so symmetrical because, again, this is what you want. Black has no problems in terms of pawn structure and also has no problems in terms of the pieces. You see, the rooks are nicely connected. The bishop is defending the knight. There seems to be just a lovely harmony for both sides, but it still means that a position is easy.
That's right. Normally, especially at this level, in order to win a game of chess, you need some action happening. You see some open lines, or you need, for example, you need a bishop in exchange for your opponent's knight. Here, both sides have exactly the same material, exactly the same pawns. White has just pushed his rook up the board in the middle there.
So that's some action.
Some very, very small action. That rook will just get kicked away sooner or later. Black will use a pawn to kick that rook back.
Okay.
And there we see it.
There we see it. Okay, so still, will we see some fireworks now?
I maybe we'll see some fireworks, or more likely, I think we'll see that rook just retreat itself.
Yep, it's retreated to the second square, so White is getting ready to line up the rook on the left-hand side of the board next to it. So I agree with you. I think this is going to see...
Will it be a quick draw, or will they try to play this out a little bit?
I think they'll try to play...
They will try to play it out, but this kind of chess is like very... It's like the vacuum cleaner has come on the board.
Everything's going to disappear.
Yeah, I wish that vacuum cleaner could come to my apartment as well now. After 5 days, 6 days of chess, it's, well, the apartment hasn't gotten much attention, I have to say.
Yeah, that's right. And there we see Black's last move. He is attacking the white queen with his knight. I'm a bit surprised by that last decision by Magnus Carlsen. We see the queens have left the board, though. And although the green bar below the two players, it's slightly zoomed over to white side, but I don't think that's enough. I think the fact that all the pieces, they're being hoovered up by that vacuum, I think all the pieces are disappearing. Just that fact alone means that Napomniachi, he won't have enough pieces left at the end to try and create some winning chances.
I agree with that, David. I can see some trades happening and then the knight will simply retreat and there's just no way for White to penetrate the position. White really... I mean, I'm really worried about these minor pieces, the knight and the bishop that are on the board. They don't have any posts. They don't have anything, so... I just can't see a way forward because you always have to be thinking in terms of progress. I mean, you can't just play chess to stay at a standstill. You have to look at ways to move forward. And I'm curious about the pause, though. What is Napomniachi thinking?
That's right. I'm surprised Napomniachi's thinking here. Maybe he's just regretting his game choices, his life choices. I don't know. Maybe he's just thinking about the last game where he was so close to winning. Nearly every move was winning, apart from what he did. And... OK, he can capture the black rook now, either with the white rook or with the white bishop. One of those has to capture the black rook, but it won't change anything. Black will just retreat his knight from the edge of the board, bring it back into the game, and...
Well, judging by his face, he could actually be thinking, why did I choose chess? Yeah. Why am I not doing something else?
We've all been there.
Yeah,
yeah, I try not to think like that when I'm playing chess.
It's always a good idea to play chess. We've been talking a lot about memory today, and I know there's a lot of studies saying that playing chess is great brain health, really, avoiding diseases like Alzheimer's and stuff like that. So it's always a good idea to play chess.
Yes, it's always a good idea to play chess and just enjoy the game. OK, so we see a flurry of moves. The bishop did, in fact, take the rook, and Napomniachi is trying to make progress by advancing his king-side pawns.
That's right, so White just slowly gaining some space there. That last pawn push we see there with the green arrow, just slowly gaining control of some territory. But there's just too many pawns left. There's not enough pieces left. This one, I think Magnus Carlsen, he'll be looking for a way to trade off those last set of rooks. He'll be looking for a way of maybe trading the bishops to the knights. Yeah, there's just not enough open lines here for White to get into the enemy camp. The pawn's still very symmetrical. White does have a set of double pawns on that line in front of the white king, but those double pawns aren't weaknesses. They all protect each other. Magnus advancing on the left now. Yeah, the chances of disappearing move by move for Napomniachi. Also, the clock situation. Magnus Carlsen has more time than he started with. Napomniachi won't be able to put pressure on the clock this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just a very symmetrical position, and I expect that the rooks will be traded off very shortly. I mean, I think the thing is, though, you need to keep the rooks on the board if you're going to make any attempt at winning this, okay? And he has advanced the pawn on the left-hand side. I really like this. This type of move is a David Howell type of move because that pawn.
Bad move, no.
No. Because I noticed something about David. David likes to control his opponent's knights with his pawns. So the black knight was threatening to jump into a square on the left-hand side of the board in the white camp at one stage, and white has just prevented any idea like that. And that's what I've noticed about your kind of play.
Oh, wow. I didn't notice that about myself. So I'm honoured you think that, Jovanka. And yeah, if we bring up the board just to show what Jovanka means, white's last move, just pushing this pawn forward one square. Black's knight is slightly constricted now. It cannot jump forward because it's controlled by a pawn. It cannot jump forward to this square either. It's controlled by a pawn. And likewise, it's controlled by a lot of pawns right now. So white is constricting that knight. Also, white might try to advance a pawn of his own. So it's still very, very much symmetrical. Not too much happening, but white is slowly trying to gain a bit of territory, maybe. Yeah, still very much in the balance, though.
All right. Well, Magnus Carlsen is thinking he just went under 15 minutes, which was the time he started with. So he seems very comfortable in this position so far.
Yeah, and I think he'll just be wondering how he can end this game as quickly as possible. The tension, that emotional tension, he just wants to get it done and over and focus just on one day tomorrow. Focus on stopping Napomniachi from coming back. So Magnus, he'll want this game to be over. The longer it goes on, maybe the more he'll get nervous. Yeah. Possibly.
And we have seen so many times we've been quite certain that this is a draw, this is a win. And then they blunder all the time. These time controls, I love it.
Well, this is the thing with chess. The spectator sees everything.
Exactly. It's so easy to sit here.
It's not our pieces, so we can why not sacrifice it?
Yeah, if we were sitting at the board, we would be making the same mistakes or worse mistakes than they make.
Or playing better.
Or playing better. And we did talk yesterday about heart rates as well. And I guess that also come into play when your pulse is rising and your heart is racing. And it's harder to maybe control your emotions and make the right decision.
Definitely. I think it's human nature. As soon as you see the clock drop below 1 minute, your heart automatically starts pumping. And it's just hard to fully focus on the board, fully focus on being objective and calm and having that composure to look for the best move. So,
yes, I mean, when your clock drops to less than a minute, the thought process goes like this: my clock, the ball, my clock.
It's actually a rhythm to it.
And before you know it, 50 seconds has passed and you haven't come up with a move. And then you go, oh.
Maybe that's how we burn the calories, looking left and right all the time. It's not even the finger moves, the mouse movements, it's just the looking.
My clock. The board, my clock, the board. It's going to, that song will be stuck to my brain now.
I'm sorry.
Somebody's going to turn that into a meme now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We should all do it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. My clock, the board.
Oh, I can't
my clock, the board. My clock, the board. Okay.
And we have seen some
Let's get back to the board, yes.
Right.
You did it the wrong way too, David.
Oh, sorry.
You're better at chess than music. Okay.
Agreed. Better at chess than most things. But we have seen a set of pawns leave the board. We have seen a trade on the right-hand side there. Fair trade, pawn for pawn, but the position isn't completely symmetrical anymore. If we bring up the board just to see what's happened, Magnus Carlsen, he did try to open up the position. He's trying to force the matter. He's trying to end the game as quickly as possible by making a draw. So he pushes the pawn forward. These pawns left the board. But I don't like that decision. This pawn is doubled. We mentioned that on the same line. Black is helping white to remove a doubled pawn. And just after the capture, white moves his rook across. Maybe he wants to push this pawn forward. We've seen a couple more moves. Black pushes on the right-hand side. White improves his bishop. Still not so much going on. That's reflected in the bar in the middle there. 0.0. Okay, 0.2. It's not a huge amount happening.
No, I agree. There really isn't so much, and there's no progress being made. The only thing that I can see, and it's in favour of the black side, and it's minuscule, but basically it's that the pawn on the right-hand side of the board could potentially one day, in a pipe dream, make itself into an outside passport.
That's right. If we, a long pipe dream.
It needs a lot of assistance.
That's right. So Jovanka thinks that maybe, in Magnus's wildest fantasies, this pawn might run down the board. It's a long shot. This pawn will be stopped by an enemy pawn. But I like the idea. It's good to dream.
That's the hope. Yeah,
yeah. The dreaming H pawn. Harry the H pawn.
Yes, exactly.
The dream.
Yes.
This pawn on the H line, it doesn't have an opponent, so there's a small chance that might happen. But I think Napomniachi will stop it before it gets there.
Yes, that's why I said it was like
1% chance, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, we know that Jan Napomniachi has to win this game if he wants to equal the first semi-final day match. If it is a draw or Magnus wins, then Magnus will win day one.
That's right. And actually, we have seen a trade. White has exchanged his own bishop for Black's knight. Another fair trade. They're worth roughly the same right now. The bishop and the knight. White moves his knight forward. Maybe going to take that black bishop. The more trades that happen, we've mentioned it a few times, the more trades that happen, the closer we're edging towards a draw. Magnus pushing a pawn on the left side there. White could capture it. It looks like White would win a pawn, but Black's rook will whiz across to the end and start to take those pawns. I don't think it's normally not a good idea to take away from the centre with your pawns.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to imbalance things too much right now.
And if they finish this quite soon, it will be a very early day for both players. The earliest they've had so far in the Skilling Open, and they will have a lot of time to prepare for tomorrow.
Yes, they will have a lot of time to prepare, and they perhaps will have a lot of time to think about what happened.
Okay, so probably not a good idea.
What went wrong?
Well, especially for Jan Napomniachi then. You said it so many times, it's sometimes just about forgetting everything.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Yeah,
but it's easier said than done. Okay, so a pawn has advanced, and so we see a flurry of trades.
That's right. A few pawns have left the board now. That left-hand side is all just starting to disappear. Jovanka mentioned it, the vacuum cleaner is out. Just hoovering up all those pawns. We will see Jan Napomniachi. Magnus has just taken a pawn. Napomniachi will capture that pawn back. He's got three options now. That last pawn move by Black can be captured by a knight, a pawn, or a rook. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. All of them make sense for White. I think none of them, unfortunately, will kind of create enough imbalance for Magnus Carlsen or Napomniachi to really hope for a win here. Magnus, remember, Anish Giri made this mistake a few times. He traded off the queens early in the game when he shouldn't have done. Napomniachi, he found out in that last game he was completely winning, but the queens were off the board. Magnus is an endgame genius, an endgame expert. It looks like another case of Magnus being in full control. Napomniachi will need to come back tomorrow. I think he will be down 1 point after today's matches.
Well, that's what he did in the quarterfinals. He did make a comeback. He was fantastic on day two. All right, we have a move, two moves.
So the black rook has gone to the left-hand side of the board and is now looking at an open line. So this is relatively good news. But there's so few pieces on the board that it's very difficult to see it kind of actually transferring itself into something material, which would be like an extra pawn.
That's right. If we bring up the board, we see Magnus. He kind of has a threat here. It's not a huge threat, just a small one, but he's doing the right thing. Rooks need these open lines. He wants to jump down and attack the white king. Rooks are so great at covering lots of territory in one move. That rook is going to swing up the board. That rook's going to maybe give check to the white king. Therefore, white tries to distract black. He's pushing a pawn forward. He's offering more trades. Black's rook can give check to the black's rook can give check to the white king right now, but it is just one check. More pawns are going to disappear soon. That vacuum cleaner is gaining speed right now. It's gaining speed. It's covering more ground. We will see a trade of pawns in the centre here, and the game is fizzling out. Napomniachi starting to come to terms with that.
Yeah, who is it that will offer the draw here, basically? And we know they can't offer a draw until 40 moves, but they are just 2 moves away from that.
That's right. I think in terms, there's an etiquette in chess. There's kind of a code of honour where the player who is trying to win or the player who needs to win is the one who should offer the draw. Magnus Carlsen, maybe if he offered the draw, it might be a bit not disrespectful, but it just might be a bit presumptuous, thinking, okay, I know this is a draw, but I'm ahead. So Napomniachi, the onus is on him, I think, to make that draw offer, especially with white, especially in the must-win situation. It's him. I think Magnus will wait until Napomniachi offers.
Yeah, and online chess is also very difficult to kind of offer a draw.
Yeah, do they have a button? Or?
Yeah, you have to find a button, and sometimes that's a bit of a difficult or perhaps a distraction. And so you're just like, okay, well, if they want to draw, we'll repeat the position 3 times.
Oh, yeah, because that's usually what we've seen here, repetition of moves. Okay, well, we will pay attention to that. It's not happening yet.
No, that's right. And actually, Magnus Carlsen is the one maybe playing for the win. He's the only one with winning chances here. We see Black's king is very active. Black's king on the left-hand side there. It's actually made a journey across the board, targeting one of White's pawns. And that's why White has retreated his knight to defend his own pawn on the left side there.
So, yeah, I agree with you, David. That was absolutely brilliant. You know, the king has made a brilliant journey, but it took a step backwards.
That's right. I was surprised by that step backwards by the Black king. The king was beautifully placed. I think Black could also have just taken White's pawn on the left side there, just to get rid of one last attacking force. And Napomniachi, remember, if he's only left with a knight or if he's only left with a king, the game is immediately a draw.
Perhaps Magnus is trying to be sneaky. Perhaps, dare I say it, he wants to win this. I'm thinking, okay, so he's put all his pieces on the left-hand side of the board, and he's perhaps dreaming that if he wins White's only pawn on that side, then he can push that pawn all the way.
That's right. So maybe this pawn will drop. White's pawn is very weak here, only defended by this knight, whereas it is attacked by the Black bishop right now. Maybe he'll use his rook to try and attack that pawn as well. And as Jovanka mentioned, if this pawn disappears, Black will be left with an unrivaled, very, very dangerous passed pawn. Pawn will have, well, a clear run at goal, really, a clear run to the end of the board when it might become a queen. So some small chances for Magnus Carlsen. Napomniachi won't let it get that far, but I agree. Black is maybe the only one who can win this position.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's Ian Napomniachi who has to make the decision. How is he going to handle that? And the thing is that there is some psychology. The danger on the board might not be that great, but the psychological danger could be greater than the actual threat. So White has pushed the pawn forward. That's an interesting choice there.
That's right. If we bring the board up, we can see White's idea. That pawn push, it does anchor a square. So White is now threatening to give a check to the Black king. That pawn protects this square. Instead, I think we will see that Magnus Carlsen maybe just snaps this pawn off the board. And it looks like a pawn sacrifice for White, but it's just a trade. We have seen that happen. White's just going to capture this remaining Black pawn. Everything's disappearing. The whole left-hand side of the board, all the pawns have been obliterated. And 2 pawns versus 2 pawns on the same side of the board is just a dead draw. Neither side can make progress there. Neither side can get their pawn to the end of the board. This one, I think the knight and bishop balance each other out. The rooks balance each other out.
Yeah, the only thing that I can see is that the Black king has been caught on the wrong side of the board. It would be a lot more comfortable if it were on the right-hand side, looking at its own pawns, but Magnus has it under control. In fact, he is now attacking the White knight. Where can that knight go to? It has to move. To move all the way back to the edge.
The knight will be forced to retreat. That knight is almost trapped right now. We saw in the first game between these guys, Magnus trapping Napomniachi's knight in the centre of the board. This time, though, the knight does retreat. It is very safe there. We don't like our knights on the edge of the board. Knights are very bad at the edge of the board. They can only cover 4 squares compared to the normal 8 squares. But on this occasion, we will see another set of pawns leave the board, most likely.
And the last game between Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura, it did end in a draw. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, that Wesley So, a little bit surprisingly, is the winner of day 1 in that All-American matchup. And it means Hikaru Nakamura, he needs to make a huge comeback tomorrow if he wants to go to the big final. All right. Well, we are trying to get a hold of either of these players to get a comment, but we will also, of course, follow the end of this game, even if we are quite sure it will end in a draw.
Yeah, and I think it might end in a draw very soon. We've passed that magical move 40. Actually, the players have agreed a draw.
Oh, they have.
All of the pawns were about to disappear from that right side of the board. Neither side has enough pieces left to win the game. A fair result in this game, but Napomniachi he'll rue all those missed chances he had earlier in the match.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is going to be a big regret, because if he had put those 2 points in the net, then he would be in the lead and he would have been winning this match. But as it is, he has to make a tremendous comeback tomorrow.
Yeah, and Magnus Carlsen, he's got this, I mean, this is a champion's mentality, to win when you're not at your best. It's like winning dirty, I think he called it. It's when you're struggling, you can't find your form, but you still find a way by hook or by crook. He's so good at doing that. It shows you don't need to be at your best all the time, but you just need to find a way. You need to find your opponent's weakness. And he seemed to find it. He found Napomniachi just unable to finish him off.
All right, well, wow, we ended quite early today. All the 4 games in the semi-final has ended, and it has ended with Wesley So being the winner of the All-American battle with Hikaru Nakamura. He's leading 1-0 after day 1, and also Magnus Carlsen is the winner of the battle between himself and the Russian Jan Napomniachi. So that means Hikaru Nakamura and Jan Napomniachi needs to make huge comebacks tomorrow, and we know they're capable. We've seen it in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, we saw it. We saw the drama happen in the quarterfinals, so we saw some brilliant games from Napomniachi. Has been done before against Magnus. Magnus has taken the first match and then lost the second, and the match has been decided on tie breaks. So Magnus isn't himself. Magnus by himself isn't invulnerable. He can be beaten. And yeah, it's up to Jan Napomniachi now.
And we actually do have Wesley So joining us. Congratulations on winning day 1, Wesley. Wow, fantastic.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, good to see you again. Yeah,
good to see you
very
too.
Happy today.
What was this day like? We know Hikaru is fierce online, but you just got the upper hand on him.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like it's simply not Hikaru's day, and I feel very good today. I felt like I played better than the last 2 days. So I feel very good today. But at the same time, I think Hikaru played subpar today. So I'm sure tomorrow he'll play 2 times harder. So I'm going to have a sleepless night.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm sure he'll bounce back tomorrow. I'm sure he'll play much better. But today's just not his day.
Yeah, so in the quarterfinals, you went into day 2 knowing that you had to come back, you had to beat Timo Rajabo. Tomorrow you will be the leader when you go into that day. How will you attack it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a good feeling to be in the lead, but every match is different. So we'll see. Tomorrow, I'll try to play solidly, of course. I mean, 4 draws is more than enough. So try to not run into any problems with the black pieces, especially in the opening, and hopefully be able to hang on. But I mean, if I played like I did today, I'm pretty confident. But we'll see. I've had bad days and I've had good days also.
Wesley, David, do you have a question for Wesley?
I do. So, Wesley, you won 1 game today, you drew 3. In the game you won, you had an opportunity to repeat the position 3 times, but you went for glory, you went for the win. Were you ever tempted to bail out and take the draw, or did you always have that win in mind?
Yeah, good question, David. Good to see you again. Well, actually, Hikaru and I made a lot of draws, also in the preliminaries, and but in the match format, someone has to win, right? So someone has to push through. We can't make all draws. But at the same time, I thought my position had no risk. At that stage, I had a pretty good advantage. At that point, he messed up in the opening by playing c5. So I thought there's a possibility that I could mess it up, but when you give me attacking chances, I feel like I just have to go for it. So when he gave me a piece sacrifice on f6, I didn't even think twice.
Yeah, we saw the game. We thought it was a very beautiful finish. So well done.
Well done, Wesley.
Yeah, thank you.
And when we talked to you yesterday, we know you were heading out for a Thanksgiving dinner to have some leftovers. Maybe what will the rest of the day look like for you now? We know it's not too late in Minnesota where you are playing.
Yeah, it's only 2 in the afternoon here. It's very early. I don't know. I try not to do too much chess work during tournament. You need to keep your energies for the games. So I'll just try to relax, watch some videos, watch the news, and Just try to clear my brain, clear my mind. I feel very, very good today, which is not what I can say for the other days. So I'll try to be in the same form as tomorrow.
Okay, perfect, Wesley. Good luck tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us. And we actually have also Hikaru Nakamura joining in. Hi, Hikaru.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, thank you. So glad you're joining us.
Good to be here.
Thank you. What was today like after you got that loss against Wesley? We were quite surprised because we know you are the online king.
Yeah, well, I mean, I basically decided to change lines. I didn't play the same thing that I played against Magnus and Maxime in previous games, and Wesley played, I mean, I thought a very principled approach, which I hadn't looked at, and I got a pretty bad position right away. So, I mean, it was just a bad position out of the opening, and then yeah, I don't think Wesley was as precise as he could have been, but nonetheless, he played some good moves, and that's that. As far as the other games go, I thought they were all pretty dry. I mean, I thought the final game actually, it was very close to winning for me, but unfortunately, it was by one move. I can't checkmate him on the H file, so it was a little bit unfortunate. But it's only one day, so we play again tomorrow.
So Hikaru, will you be taking inspiration from yesterday? We saw you had this really dramatic day, this comeback. It must have been a real roller coaster for you. How did it feel yesterday, and will that inspire you for tomorrow's games?
Well, I think there's a significant difference in the matches, because in the match against Maxime, when I lost on the first day, I very easily, I think, could have won on the first day as well. I was winning both the white games, and I had many opportunities, whereas today, I mean, it didn't really feel like I had that many opportunities. Maybe the last game was the only chance where I felt that maybe I had some winning possibilities. So I think the whole general layout is a lot different, but certainly coming back the way I did there, or, some of the other events like against Ding or against Dubov and some of the other finals or semifinals, I'll draw inspiration. But you just come back, play, and luckily it's a best of two and not a best of one or something like that. So it's a new day.
And how do you relax between the games? How do you pump yourself up, or is it just about meditation, relaxing, getting yourself in the right frame of mind?
I think mainly it's just being in the right frame of mind. I think at this point in the tournament, we've all played a lot of games, so we've all looked at a lot of our preparation before, and I don't think there's really a need to review it. So I think for the most part, it's just relaxing for those 10 to 15 minutes, and then just playing again. But I will say I do like the fact that the breaks are pretty short, because for me, usually I'll go use the restroom, grab some coffee or water, and I'm already like 5 minutes are gone. So it's, you're ready to play the next game. And I think certainly when things aren't going well, you always are ready to play the next game. And so I like the fact that the breaks aren't super long.
And Hikaru, I have to say, we are loving seeing your web camera, all the emotion that you bring to the games. Are you triggered by this format? And as you said, short breaks between the games and have to do a comeback tomorrow. It looks like you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not triggered, that's for sure. But yeah, I think, I like the format, actually. I think the fact that there's always something going on, there always are games going, especially from the perspective of the fans, makes this very exciting. And as far as tomorrow, I just try to play good chess and see what happens. And if I play good chess, I think there will be opportunities. And whether I can capitalize on them or not is really the question. But, we'll see.
All right, Hikaru, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck tomorrow. We're looking forward to seeing if you can do that comeback.
Great, thanks. See you guys.
See ya. All right, that was Hikaru Nakamura, and right away we have world champion Magnus Carlsen joining us after he won day one against Napomniachi. Congratulations, Magnus. Can you hear us, Magnus? Magnus Carlsen, can you hear us? It looks, well, we see his camera. I don't know if he can hear us. Oh.
We can hear him.
Yeah, we can hear him. All right, we will try again to get a hold of Magnus Carlsen. In the meantime, we can react to what Hikaru Nakamura said. So great to hear his reaction, and he seems ready for day two already.
Yes, he does. He seems quite pumped up, and I really like the fact that he gets motivated by the shortness of the rounds, and he just wants to get back in the ring and get fighting again. And the format seems to suit him.
And it's impossible, David, to write him off. Even if he lost day one, he can always make that comeback day two.
Exactly. He's like the ultimate fighter on the chessboard. And I have so much respect. He was so philosophical about that defeat. I mean, normally we see him emotional at the board, but he's able to compartmentalize that, able to push it aside and focus on playing his best chess. I can't wait for tomorrow's action.
I know I can't wait for tomorrow either. And I think now we have Magnus Carlsen joining us. Hi, Magnus, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Perfect. Congratulations on winning day one of the semifinals.
Thank you. It was quite similar to the first day of the match with Anish, actually. The only difference is then I won the first game instead of the last game, but the other games were pretty similar in that I was mainly struggling.
It seemed like a roller coaster day, and Jan Napomniachi, he was fighting for wins. Many times we were commentating on that in the studio. He didn't quite get that. Did you feel comfortable the entire day, or has it been nerves coming into the picture for you as well?
No, I felt good in the last game. I didn't think there was any danger there, but I wouldn't say I was very comfortable, especially in the third game. 'Cause I really messed that up pretty bad early on. The second game, obviously, I had a very nice position, and it should never have gotten to where it was. But once it got there, obviously, was never comfortable.
So Magnus, you mentioned that third game, and we saw you on the camera as well. We heard you had some internet problems. Can you talk us through what happened and whether that affected you on the board?
What happened is that the browser closed for no reason that I could discern. So it just all closed, and was.
You got quite angry.
I couldn't log back in, and I didn't understand why. So that I mean I could see myself losing a game there on disconnect, and I really don't understand what happened there, because I think in general my internet was fine.
We actually did see a piece where you answer that in the choice between really bad relationships and really bad internet, you would choose bad relationships. We all know how annoying really bad internet is. And Magnus, how will you attack day two again, being in the lead here before that decisive day?
I guess I'll try to prepare better in the openings. As you could see in the first game, was well prepared, and then he made a mistake early on, and I won quite easily. But in the others, especially in the third game, I didn't really get what I want. So I'll have to cook up something new there. But overall, like I'm pretty happy to have survived, and I feel like in these matches, like if you can survive your worst day, you're probably gonna be fine overall.
All right, well, Magnus, we're looking forward to see what you bring to the table tomorrow. Good luck for day two of semifinals.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right, so the world champion, like he was in the quarterfinal, he is in the lead before semifinals. He did seem quite tired after this day, Ivanka.
Yeah, because it was kind of emotionally grueling for him, you know, because I'm sure he was a bit annoyed after his second game, which he fought a very good position, and then had to fight for his life. And then game three was just everything went wrong, but then he held it. It just seemed like Ian Napomniachi was jinxed.
And what are your expectations, David, for yesterday's matchup between Jan Napomniachi and Magnus Carlsen?
Yeah, it's so hard to predict what will happen tomorrow. I think Tonight, Magnus will just be relieved. Napomniachi, I think it might come down to whether he dwells on today and the events of today, or whether he's able to turn over a new leaf and get fighting tomorrow. I think Magnus Carlsen needs to up his game in order to keep the lead.
Well, we can actually check with Jan Napomniachi because he is joining us. Hi, Jan, how are you doing?
Well, worse than it should be, but I think I'm going to do it.
I can't believe the roller coaster day you've been through, and so many chances, and just so close to doing great stuff. What has this day been like?
Well, I kind of feel relief right now, because in the first game I returned the favor from at some point returned the favor from the group stage when Magnus mixed up the square for his queen. So actually, I think queen b8 is a little bit weird comparing to queen c7, but I would like to see queen c7 at the board, not queen b8. But this doesn't really matter, because queen b8 is clearly losing because of d6. Yeah, but it doesn't really matter, because after that I had I think 2 very good chances, to call it mildly. So I think it's about making making some good decisions in the very end of the game. And as I think last year said, that is the most difficult in chess is to win a winning position. So that's something I surely need to master before tomorrow's match.
So I'm curious, what did you tell yourself after your first game? How did you get back to the game and just fight the second and third
Well, I
game?
wasn't... of course I wasn't happy, but it happens. So clearly queen b8 is not a move I wanted to see at the board. So in fact, it's not like queen c8, So queen c8 would be more picturesque, perhaps. But the result is more or less the same, yeah? So of course, queen c7. Funny enough, I believe we checked this line together in 2014 together with Magnus. Was a small piece of work. I don't even remember when, but I remember well. We had some discussion about this position, and now it appeared at the board. Yeah, that was funny.
Well, Jan, you did a great comeback in the quarterfinal against Levon Aronian. Will you take inspiration from that and go in with the same fighting spirit tomorrow?
Well, clearly I'm not so unhappy with my play today. The game 2 was not that great, and I think I mixed up things in the opening. And game 1 is okay. It's hard to comment on it, and actually I think we both played far below our level, and Magnus during the whole game, but when he was good in defensive part, and I managed to compensate this with awful conversion. I need some extra energy, extra motivation for a comeback. Anyway, this is best of 2, so one match you may lose, but second you get a win. Yeah, so that's the rules are very simple.
All right, Jan, I actually noticed in the background there you have your Christmas stockings up already. Are you already decorating for Christmas?
Well, this year you need some extra joy, yeah, some extra, I like to call it Christmas spirit, yeah. So just to get some good emotions, because there is not so much fun this year we can have around here.
All right, yeah, we're looking so much to see your fighting spirit, fighting for that comeback tomorrow. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jan Napomniachi. Decorating for Christmas already. Fantastic. I'm getting in the spirit.
I liked his attitude. It was easy come, easy go. I really expected him to be quite moody, angry, and saying, he was missed. But no, he was just laughing it off, and, nice touch with Magnus playing.
Exactly.
They had studied together. Ooh.
And he did actually explain a little bit, David, about what happened today.
Yeah, so I think it all just came down to that first game. And as we see on the board, Jan, he mentioned this queen move. So he mentioned his queen over to the left-hand side of the board. This was the big mistake. He said, at least it wasn't as bad as the mouse slip he mentioned. He could have dropped his queen just 1 square, where it would have been taken by a bishop. So it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. He moved his queen over. He said he regretted. This is the small difference at the top level. He regretted not moving his queen forward 1 square, just diagonally. This gives black a great position, because now his knight will never be trapped. The knight can always drop back and be defended by the queen. Instead, a couple of moves later, his knight was trapped in the middle of the board. He said he'd discussed this with Magnus Carlsen before, this exact opening. I mean, imagine the mind games. That's the psychology. Someone's used something against you where you've discussed it before. We talked about Christmas. This was a bit of a Christmas gift, early gift for Magnus Carlsen.
Or even birthday gift, because Magnus's birthday is coming up.
That's right.
That's right.
But no more gifts tomorrow, I think, from Jan.
Nope. And this move was very decisive for Jan Napomniachi. He ended up losing the first day of semifinals again, Magnus Carlsen. And I think we can look at what has happened today. So Magnus Carlsen won day one of semifinals against Jan Napomniachi, 2.5 points against 1.5 points. And Wesley So won day one against Hikaru Nakamura. Now, these points will just leave us for tomorrow. We start with 0 points tomorrow when they play the second semi-final match. So we know that Jan Napomniachi has to win tomorrow to go to tiebreaks, and so does Hikaru Nakamura. He has to win those 4 matches, or he has to win that match containing of 4 games if he wants to take it to tiebreaks. And if you get tiebreaks, we know what that means. That means time trouble.
Exactly. We're going to slash the time and things are going to get heated up, and we're going to have 2 blitz games. And if this result is still tied, oh my God, we are going to have the best thing in the world.
Exactly.
The Armageddon, where David will have to talk a mouth-watering.
Yeah, Armageddon chess. White will have 5 minutes, Black has 4 minutes, but White has to win. A draw is not enough. We saw some Armageddon games yesterday. Armageddon means the end of the world. For one of these players, it's going to be the end of the world, but we're going to love the drama.
We are going to love the drama. So much happening tomorrow, as well as the second day of semifinals are played with these 4 excellent players. We will remind you that it is still Black Friday. So if you want to go and get your tour pass half price off on championschesstour.com, do that. And you can vote back one of the 8 players that was eliminated in the preliminaries back in for the next tournament. All right, but first we have to finish off this tournament, and tomorrow we have second day of semifinals. So please join us back for the drama that will be happening. And thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.